It was a box that AT&T did years ago, probably, I think they were 20 years, they're probably 25 years old now. They had to be installed into a house, hooked up to the phone lines that had a direct call right to the police, and if they hit the button at home, the police could come. The problem was they were discontinuing this service. They were very expensive, took a while to install. They were discontinuing it, and Victim Services says, we have nothing now to offer these victims for protection. And they asked about our AZ-21. They said, can you, or 120, can you do something with this? Similar. So I worked with engineers, and that's what I really like. I like working with the programmers and the engineers saying, look, make it do this, 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 and this, and hopefully we can get it done. And after a few months, we had the first test point set up, and it was great. The only problem we had was we had to get a call center involved, like a security center that monitors home security systems. To be able to, because we didn't want to rely on text messaging, because sometimes that's unreliable, or email systems or anything like that. We needed somebody to be notified as soon as that button was pushed. So we did find a way to have, we have a call center in Edmonton, Canada, that does all of Canada for us. And if that button on that tracker is pushed now, anywhere in Canada, basically, anywhere in the world, it will work anywhere, but if it's pushed anywhere in Canada, our call center is notified immediately, the police are called immediately. And at first, all they were given was the person's name and the person's GPS location. And it was up to the police to go and find them. But I knew as a police officer, we can do better than this. And I knew technology was better than this. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, I had some ideas, so I went to my whiteboard and spent about the next 6 hours drawing out my thoughts on how this could work. And what we came up with was, well, what I kind of came up with was a universal police link. I call it a UPL. What I wanted was any police force, because they all have internet access, have access to a police link. Meaning if any tracker in Canada went off, because these trackers could be anywhere, and we have about 50 different police forces in Ontario. So they might be cross-jurisdictional, this victim might be in somebody else's area. I wanted any police force to be able to bring up this link and find that victim as soon as possible. And this system just started working very, very well. In fact, I'm happy to say my favorite case was we had Brantford City Police. They were our first city to have this system in place. They were kind of our test city. They actually have this screen up on one of their terminals, dispatch terminals. If you ever see a police dispatch, they actually have about 3 or 4 terminals around them at any given time. There's one terminal in Brantford that just has that on it because that screen refreshes every minute. And if there's any panic alarm with any victim service in actually Canada, because we're now going to other provinces, any of them go off, this gets activated and it just looks like that. All the agency has to do is click on this and they get details. Now what's great about this was because Brantford has that up on their system all the time, Brantford actually had a response time on one case from the time that button was pushed till the police were dispatched was between 20 and 25 seconds. She was around the corner from the officer that was dispatched, which was great, and the officer attended with under a minute. Now mind you, it was a false alarm, but if it wasn't, it was a great success. Any other time, she would have to pull out her phone, call 911, tell who she was, what her location was, hope for the best. This is always tracking. And what I looked at as a police was saying, this is great. If you want to talk about an angel of an application, this is great because it's tracking those individuals all day long as well. In fact, if you go down on our system, this is what the police will see, their last 5 points. These trackers track every 5 minutes. It takes their GPS location and reports it. If that button's pushed, it starts reporting every minute. And you might say, well, why does it have to track all the time? Well, now the police show up at that location and the tracker's left behind. She's been kidnapped, abducted by her ex who found her, and now all we have is a tracker. Now police have to conduct an investigation. So now the dispatchers can go back and see where she was 10 minutes before the alarm went off. Was she at her mother's house? Should we go interview the mom? Who was she meeting? Where was she going? Now we've got an investigative tool that the police can use as well. So this was taking some technology that might scare a lot of people, GPS being to track, but we want to use it for the good and give those women the freedom to be able to go to the mall during the day if they wanted to. Before they were confined to their house. Right? And most women actually did stay at home because they were so afraid of their life. Now they carry our trackers and they can go out on the world and have some sort of safety knowing that, yes, I've got my phone to call the police, but if I have to, I can hold that button down for 1 second and the police are coming. And I'll tell you, it's been a really good success that we've had in Canada, and I wanted to share that with you because I think we get really tied up in a lot of the negativity of the internet and all the bad things that come with it. And trust me, I've seen the worst of the worst on there. I don't think anybody would want to do the job I used to do in child pornography and not to see all the worst that was out there. But I like to think that we can use a lot of the good technology out here. And one of the things I kind of like to close, because this is one of the quickest talks I've ever had to do. When I speak to students, I'm usually an hour, and when I speak to parents, I'm a couple hours. But I want to show this, and I thought it was important because we can use technology, and I think police are always lagging behind too. It was one of the reasons I was so impressed with the OPP doing that in 1996, is no other police forces were doing it. They knew the internet was going to be this big thing. We had to have some concerns. The child pornographers were going to be using it to distribute their material now. And they got on board and started to get on it and start to understand how to investigate. And we actually, our unit, ended up training a lot of the officers throughout the world on this because we were kind of the leaders in what we were doing online. And it comes down to education. My last slide I always want to hit on is the key to me is educating children and the public in general of the dangers, especially with IoT, as well as the sharing of knowledge, expertise, and ideas with those wanting a safe community. I'm a big believer in, look, I told you I'm not a programmer, but I'll work with one any day and say, look, is there any way we can do this? What if we could just do this with this type of application? And that's what we did with the GPS. It just took a call from a victim service to say, look, you've got this product. How can we do some good with that? How can we really help some people and give them some freedom? And probably one of my, something that makes me feel just good, I've been to a lot of victim services conferences now, and to have these ladies who carry our device come up and say, this is a godsend. This little device that you guys have done has given me freedom. I can now go out. One lady came right out of depression. She was so depressed by not being able to go out and see people because she was so afraid of her life. But it's giving her that comfort and that knowledge that the police were just around the corner and she had that technology. Are there flaws in it? Sure. If she's at a cell range, there's all sorts of different things we could go back and forth, but it's better than what they had, which was nothing. And to be honest with you, I've looked at the services with 90% of the world's coverage under cell. We're pretty good in Canada, and we haven't had too many issues with that. But other than that, the system is brilliant. It works really well for helping the community, helping these women. We actually had a family as well with 5 people carrying it because the husband tried to murder the mother and wanted to kill all the children as well. And the whole family were carrying these devices. So it's just one of those things. I wanted to really show the angel. I could have probably went off on the devils a lot more on the internet, but I will tell you, we know there's a lot of devils out there on the internet, and probably my biggest concern are the children. Not knowing about that their phone is telling the rest of the world where they are and what they're doing. And I'll tell you, we have to change how we educate our kids nowadays, because everywhere I've been to speak, they just given a phone by their parents and said, here you go, have at it. And they don't realize all of these things are connected now, that where they're going is actually being shared with other people. I think they'd be surprised at how many times they go into a place and, or post something on Facebook and don't realize they've just given their address away, where they are at that moment. So I wanted to just share that with you today while we were kind of take you out of the technical side of things and just show you some of the applications and some of the good that this technology can do and how it can help our society in general. But I do want you to go away remembering that education is an extremely important part of how we're going to help with these dangers. I know there's a technical side, but we really do have to start educating, especially our youth today. And like I said, this is my first time in Hong Kong. I'm not sure exactly if you have education in your education systems about technology and what the dangers are online. But it's extremely important that we let everybody know, especially in this day and age, with the Internet of Things and everything talking to each other. So with that, I'll leave it to some questions if anybody has. And please no technicals. Does anybody have a good question?
Hi. I'm wondering, you charge people, right? Or only they buy the device, or they pay?
Oh, the device itself? Yeah. Well, how we've worked it with victim services, there is a monthly fee for the device because it's using cell technology. So you've got data transfer on that. And the unit itself, you know, with victim services, I was telling the police here, we really don't make, our company doesn't make a lot on the victim service side because we wanted to do it basically kind of give back to the community and say this is a decent project to work on, but the units themselves are, you know, $100 type thing. They're very reliable. The antenna in them too, this is one thing I was always asked about the cell. For some reason we've found that where I can't get cell service, our devices will still work. And what's good about the device too, I will tell you that there is data stored inside. So if you are at a cell range and it's trying to report to our server saying, hey, here's where I am, it just stores those locations until it does find a cell frequency and it just blasts all those points to it. So you can always backtrack. So a lot of security companies in that like the idea of it for their trucking. For instance, somebody who might take a truck, you know, off the beaten path to drop off a load of cigarettes or something and then get back on and say, hey, I'm at a cell range. Well, this is tracking you no matter where you went. In fact, you can deactivate the power button on it remotely. There's a lot of different features in it I can go into, but I mean, what we liked about it is we can send it commands from the internet. So I can tell it, you know, start reporting every minute. Give me a text message if this tracker goes over 30 kilometers an hour, for instance. That's one that's great for parents who have it with children. I mean, we have one autistic boy carrying it, as father always puts it, he always has baggy shorts. But when it rains out, he likes to go and shovel rain puddles. That's just something that he does. But sometimes he gets lost in time, and the parents all of a sudden can't find him. They used to call the police, they said on average about twice, 3 times a year, because he'd go missing. They haven't called the police in the last 5 years because he's always got one. So now they just bring him up online and go, oh, he's down at the neighbors, in the back of the neighbor's yard, and they go and get him. So it's really neat technology.
One more thing. Like in Hong Kong, maybe this is the first time in Hong Kong you wouldn't know. Like in Hong Kong, there's many buildings, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to, you know, the GPS.
No, that's exactly what I was. I met with the police yesterday, and we actually talked about that. And I said somewhere like here might be a little bit different because we do find when there's big buildings, not to mention, it might go off in the building. What floor are you on? You got some tall buildings here, you know what I'm saying? You know, so it does, but at least you've got an area. And that's kind of how we looked at it. Yeah, we're going to have to work around certain things. It's not going to tell you your elevation. It's not going to. But if it does work out of the building, and they have worked pretty good. The only problem I've had getting a signal or getting a panic signal to go out is actually a hospital or police station. And I think it's the way the buildings are built. The metal in them or something like that, yeah, we've had difficulties. But anywhere else, we've had a lot of really good success with it.
Thank you, Mr. Nicol. Now may I invite our chairman, Mr. Chester Song, to present a souvenir to Mr. Nicol. So next, may I invite Ms. Rebecca McKinnon, Director of Ranking Digital Rights at New America, to come onto stage and share with us on the topic, who are the things for, and Internet of the people, for the people.
While we're getting set up, I just want to thank the Internet Society of Hong Kong for inviting me today. Let's see, oh, it's working wonderful. For giving me the opportunity to come back to Hong Kong. It feels like a homecoming, and to see so many familiar faces, old friends who I haven't seen. I realize I last was in Hong Kong like 7 years ago or something like that, which is really crazy. So I really appreciate being able to come and talk today and see everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of who the things are for, and kind of switch gears from law enforcement to human rights. And I've been working sort of at the intersection of technology and business and human rights for a long time. and talk a little bit about how some of the work I've been doing recently may relate to the Internet of Things and some issues to think about, particularly for the companies that create the products and services that make up the Internet of Things. So we've had a few mentions of smart refrigerators, and I came across, I was just kind of procrastinating on Twitter one day, and somebody retweeted this photo from John McAfee, you know, the notorious security expert. He had come across a smart refrigerator that had been hacked and had been turned into a pornography hub. Welcome to the brave new world of the Internet of Things. And you know, this presents a number of issues and problems. We could just have a whole conference about the issues and problems around some smart refrigerators being turned into porn hubs. But because I work on freedom of expression issues in addition to privacy issues, I immediately began to think about, okay, device makers, General Electric, Haier, and so on, are now going to be dealing with this kind of thing. So they're going to be having to take down content. They're going to be getting requests from governments to remove content, to block content. And so every device maker and every appliance maker is going to be having to deal with essentially, not just content issues, but freedom of expression issues. Who's making the request to block content, under whose authority, and whose rights to speak are potentially being affected, or whose rights are being affected by the speech. And so all of a sudden, all these companies who've never had to think about these issues are suddenly being thrown into these issues. I would suggest perhaps most of them are not very prepared to think about these issues. We also have, the Mirai attacks, the botnet attacks have been discussed earlier today. There's a real problem for human rights around the world these days with internet shutdowns, network shutdowns. So traditionally what happens with a network shutdown is that the government of, let's say, Egypt goes to the ISPs in Egypt and says, you will shut down your networks now. And then the networks are shut down, and then the protesters can't communicate, or recently there have been a number of nations where elections were taking place and there were network shutdowns happening. And it was the government authorities telling the ISPs to shut down both fixed line but also mobile data or that kind of thing in specific places. But now what can happen is that you can have network shutdowns effectively being engineered by non-government actors or by other governments other than the one that controls the ISPs or that has power over the ISPs. So this is an incident recently that was reported in Liberia, where you had sort of a Mirai-like situation attack happening on the network. But you could definitely imagine a situation, and sort of given the events in Hong Kong over the past few years, I had to think about this a little bit. Even if Hong Kong government won't ask the Hong Kong ISPs to shut down networks during a protest, but some other actor effectively cause a network shutdown. So this is something to think about in the world of the Internet of Things, and kind of the issue, again, of security of the things on the network, having a lot of human rights implications, political implications to think about that are scary. And then, of course, one need not remind everybody of the panopticon kind of surveillance side of the Internet of Things, which, given the elections in the United States, we're going to be even more concerned about than we already were. So, in the sort of traditional Internet world, I have a variation of this chart that just sort of says the Internet, but now it's the Internet and all the connected things. Increasingly, It is these networks that intermediate between people and their governments, as well as people and their economic behavior and their education and everything else. And so how do we ensure that this network, the Internet of Things, is in fact serving people and not just serving the corporations and the governments that are intermediating the activities? And this is a real question, and we all have a responsibility. And I like to talk a little bit about this as a sustainability issue from the perspective of those of us who may have an impact on shaping how the Internet of Things evolves. What kind of world do we want our children to be living with? Do we want a world in which our children can breathe? Right? So companies, everybody who is engaging in economic activity sort of is contributing to whether or not we have a world in which our children can breathe. So that's kind of traditional way of thinking about sustainability. What about our digital environment? What kind of environment are we building for the next generations? And are we going to be building an environment, a digital environment, whereby the children who protest against the corporations and the governments that cause them not to be able to breathe will inevitably end up behind bars because they could so easily be tracked and because their speech could also be censored? Again, all of these different choices that we're making are going to create, we're all contributing to the future, and we need to think about it. So in the world of business and human rights, there's sort of a whole field of what's known as business and human rights that isn't just about technology, but labor and supply chain, and how companies are treating their workers, or how companies are treating the communities where they're operating. And we've talked a little, people discussed the United Nations, and the United Nations has its pros and its cons, but I would say that the UN human rights system is definitely one of the more positive sides of the UN. And the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the related human rights covenants. And recently, the UN basically deputized a working group that developed something called the Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, and which basically takes kind of the core human rights principles that have been around for a long time, including freedom of expression and privacy, when you're thinking about right to assembly, also right to security of person and other things as well. How does this apply to business? And they came up with a framework that basically a three-tiered thing. Governments have the primary duty to protect human rights. We can certainly, there are many conferences about how governments are not necessarily living up to that duty, but companies also have a responsibility to respect human rights. And so given that we live in a world where governments are not living up to their responsibility a lot of the time, companies, it's not acceptable for companies to just say, well, the governments are failing and there's nothing I can do. That companies have a responsibility to do everything that they can, that they have control over, to mitigate harm to the rights of customers, employees, human beings who they affect. And both governments and companies have a duty to provide remedy to those whose rights are infringed in the course of business operations. So that's one framework that is kind of being used, I think, by a lot of people in the field of business and human rights, and also increasingly digital rights or internet and human rights in thinking about when something is going wrong, who do you talk to about it? Who do you bring up concerns with? Another organization that's now been around since 2008, so about 8 years, is the Global Network Initiative. And this is an organization, again, it's mainly traditional internet companies, and a number of telcos are starting to join, that develop a set of principles for how companies can respect freedom of expression and privacy of users in the face of government demands, because companies are getting government demands all over the world to varying degrees that have an impact on people's free expression, have an impact on people's privacy. And so what should companies be doing in that context? And so there's a set of principles and implementation guidelines that focus very heavily on what kind of due diligence are you doing before you go into a new market or roll out a new product? Are you being transparent with users about what's being collected, who's being shared with? Are you being clear when you get demands and requests? Are you only responding to legally binding ones, or are you responding to phone calls from random people? So how companies can be more accountable and sort of minimize the impact of government legislation and demands that are not always perhaps as respecting of people's rights as it might be. So kind of in that context, I've been working on, for the past few years, a project called Ranking Digital Rights, where we're evaluating very traditional, kind of not so much Internet of Things, but internet companies, telecommunications companies, and their commitments, policies, and practices that affect freedom of expression and privacy. And while we're looking not so much at Internet of Things, I think there's quite a number of principles and questions that we're asking that one could apply to the IoT field in different ways that could be adapted to that field, again, depending on the type of company and exactly what kind of service, and whether it's just privacy risks that are at stake, or whether there are also content-related issues, and so on. And so we developed a methodology, and it's available on our website. It's got 35 questions in it, in which we're looking at various aspects of companies' policies and practices. And last year we came out with our first index, just to kind of, as sort of a test of these criteria, in which we evaluated 16 companies, 8 internet companies, 8 telecommunications companies. And our idea was to select a group of companies that collectively have an impact on the digital lives of the majority of the world's internet users. So we went for a range. It wasn't just, okay, the top companies with the most users concentrated in a particular market, but we tried to sort of get a scope and evaluate a range of different internet and telecommunications companies and see what we came up with. And this was the index, and what we found was that even companies that are making commitments and disclosing a lot about their practices are not doing enough. And so the companies that are being the most transparent about what they're collecting, about who they're sharing it with, about the conditions under which content is restricted, are still, they're basically, if you're in university, 65% is not a good grade, right? So nobody's doing particularly well. And some companies are not really showing any meaningful effort in particular. They just kind of tell you what you're not allowed to do, but other than that, kind of don't do very much. And so, kind of, we're going to come out with a second index early next year in March, and we're adding a few more companies and service to the mix, and more sort of in what we would call the mobile ecosystem. And so that will be interesting to, I think the results are going to be pretty interesting. But again, what I find more interesting about this project than actually which company scored what grade, is kind of the methodology we're building and the questions we're asking. And we've been hearing from a number of companies that we didn't rank, saying that they're actually quite interested in kind of taking our questions and kind of going through their own policies and practices and getting a sense of, whether they're really doing sufficient due diligence around their policies to protect users, and whether they're doing enough to kind of demonstrate the commitment and enable users to understand enough about what's being collected, what's being shared, under what circumstances content is being restricted, so that people can make informed choices and sort of understand who is shaping their digital environment, and who to hold responsible if you don't like what's going on. And we're also working with Consumer Reports. They're working on a project in collaboration with us and some security researchers and privacy researchers, where we take our methodology that's looking at policies and commitments, and there's some people doing technical testing, and we're working with them to develop sort of a protocol for evaluating devices and software that consumers use. And so what's been interesting, I'll give you a sense a little bit of the methodology and then some of our recommendations. We look at 3 areas. The first is that in our last ranking, we called it commitment, although we're going to change it to governance because that kind of better describes what we're looking at. We look at institutional leadership. So is the CEO, is the company at the top level actually making a commitment to users' rights? Is it making a commitment to respect privacy, to maximize security of people's data, to respect freedom of expression? Is there oversight in the company about how policies are implemented? Is there staff training around privacy, freedom of expression, about how to deal with government requests in a manner that minimizes abuse? Are there whistleblowing mechanisms internally? Is there something called human rights impact assessment going on? So before a company goes into a new market or rolls out a new product, are they carrying out impact assessment on how will this particular product or this particular business affect some of the world's most vulnerable users? People who don't want their government to know their sexual preference, or people who are religious minorities, and using this product in a more risky scenario, and how might this play out? So to what extent is there impact assessment taking place? Is there engagement with stakeholders? So is the company showing evidence that they're actually talking to groups that advocate for users' rights, privacy advocates, security experts that are independent, and so on? Are there grievance and remedy mechanisms? So does the company have mechanisms for dealing with complaints about people's either freedom of expression being violated, their access to information being violated, or privacy being violated in various ways? On freedom of expression, we look at things like terms of service. Companies have legitimate reasons to have terms of service and to try and prevent, say, bullying and harassment in social networks or other things, prevent pornography, prevent other things that are obviously illegal anyway. But are the rules clear, and is the enforcement clearly explained? There have been a lot of issues, I know, even in Hong Kong, with content being taken down off of social networks of activists, and nobody's quite sure why. And so how is this handled when content is removed or blocked or accounts are deactivated? Is there notification? Is there clarity about the process? Transparency about government requests. You may have heard about something called transparency reporting, where companies report on they report data on the number of government requests they're receiving to either remove content, deactivate accounts, or hand over user information to authorities. And so to what extent is a company being transparent? Are they being transparent about private requests that they might entertain to restrict content, and what are their processes there? And how they're enforcing their terms of service, and how are they making sure that terms of service enforcement doesn't end up stifling legitimate speech, political activity, and so on. So these are examples of a couple of transparency reports, and it's not just Western companies that are doing transparency reporting. Actually, in South Korea, Kakao is the example of one company that's been doing pretty thorough transparency reporting, and they actually ranked quite high in our index because
they're really making efforts to communicate with their stakeholders. On privacy, issues include, our privacy policies are clear and accessible. You'd be surprised how many companies don't even publish clear policies for people who are not already subscribed or signed up for a service. Just clarity about, despite the fact that there are all these privacy policies that are really long that nobody reads, my colleagues and I read them, and even when you read them, the policies are not giving you clear information about what's being collected, with whom it's being shared, how long it's being retained, and so on. The privacy policies tend to just include a lot of legal language that obscures more than it clarifies. So that's a real problem. Transparency, again, about requests, how government requests are handled, is there transparency reporting around government requests? And then, of course, security practices, is there strong encryption? What are the due diligence steps that companies are taking to make sure that their services are secure? This is something that also is not well communicated in a lot of cases, and is very difficult for a consumer who's trying to make decisions about what service or product to use to really get a sense of how secure is this thing in the first place, or what efforts is the company actually taking. So sort of when we finished our first index, we came out with a number of recommendations for companies, which, again, the companies we evaluated are not so much Internet of Things companies, but more kind of traditional, old-fashioned companies, but I think that these recommendations can apply to Internet of Things companies as well. Carry out risk assessments, really kind of game through and talk to stakeholders who actually live and experience at-risk situations. People from LGBTQ communities, people from religious minority communities, people who have reason to be under threat for their activities and beliefs that are peaceful, and try to figure out, okay, how do I make sure that this product or service does not put people at risk? Be transparent and accountable, not only about the types of government requests you're getting and how you handle them, but also how you're handling private requests, if you entertain them or not, how you enforce your terms of service. Communicate clearly about what's happening to users' information. Again, the extent to which there's lack of clarity is really quite shocking, especially when we sort of go through the specific questions about what is communicated. It's very, very unclear. Establish effective grievance and remedy mechanisms. This is something that in general the industry hasn't been very good at. And provide evidence of strong security practices and be clear about, again, without sort of giving the store away to attackers, there's a lot of information you can nonetheless provide about, the fact that you're making efforts, the fact that you're carrying out due diligence, and this is, in general, not happening. We also had recommendations for governments because as we were looking at companies operating around the world, one thing that was very clear was that a lot of governments are handicapping companies' ability to actually perform well according to our indicators. That's a problem. And it all tends to be laws that, as you describe, are not enabling permissionless innovation at the edge, but rather the opposite. Laws and regulations also need to maximize companies' ability to be transparent. There are a lot of laws that forbid companies from doing transparency reporting in a lot of markets. Even, you can see where there's certain narrow types of data that there might be legitimate, arguably, we could argue about whether there's a legitimate national security reason not to, give aggregate data about the number of requests you're getting, but for law enforcement, that's kind of hard to justify again after the fact, not saying, this criminal's data was requested, we're going to notify him during the investigation. That's not what we're talking about, but just kind of aggregate data of the types of requests that companies are getting what percentage they're complying with, what percentage they're not complying with because the request might not have been fully lawful from the government. These types of data are in many markets, even for also content restriction, not fully legal, or the laws are very unclear as to whether or not it's legal for companies to disclose this type of information. And this makes it much harder for companies to be accountable to their users. I think in ways that most companies, that are not sort of in basically setting out to market harmful technologies would actually like to be able to be more transparent. Governments just have to be much more transparent and accountable about what kinds of requests they're making to companies. And so really around the world we need to, in the United States, a number of people I know very well have been trying to push for legal reforms to get the US government to be more transparent about requests. Unfortunately, with a new president coming in, and the Congress that's been elected, that's going to be rough. But again, we need to keep trying. And I also want to commend some folks here in Hong Kong. There's something called the Hong Kong Transparency Report that's using freedom of information laws to collect information about the requests that the government is making to ISPs. They're publishing that information in a more accessible form. A number of people in groups in a number of countries have started to do similar projects. In Asia, in both South Korea and Taiwan, we're starting to see this type of project as well. And again, it really helps the public understand better what this relationship is between the government and the products and services and the citizen, and whether that relationship is in the right place or whether that relationship needs adjustment and constraining. So I'll stop here, but I thought that sort of giving an overview of our approach might be useful as we're thinking about how do we build an Internet of Things that's accountable to the people and doesn't just enable opaque abuse of power. And again, I think particularly given the way things are going politically, and given that we can't necessarily count on our leaders to do the right thing, those of us who are in business, those of us who are engineering things and programming things, I think the weight is on our shoulders even more to contribute to the kind of world we want our children to live in and thrive in. And so with that, I'll stop and see if there are any questions.
This is very good. I'm just wondering, so Yahoo said 1 billion account was hacked and it didn't tell the user until the Verizon thing.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you.
Okay. So, like the case of Yahoo, they got 1 billion accounts hacked, right? I'm one of the Yahoo users, they never tell me that my account was hacked or not hacked. And banks, sometimes you got news say 40 million credit cards get stolen. I'm one of the members, say, for that bank, they never tell me and say, is your credit card one of them? Yeah. So where does this fall into?
Yeah, well, they should be notifying. Yeah, we have one of our indicators in our methodology is about breaches and notification around breaches and best practice around breaches.
But yet I felt that that's not even proper social responsibility, right? So I'm one of the customers, in many cases I'm a pay users.
Yeah.
They don't even tell me. So,
right.
So Google same thing, right? They will take some of my information and do direct marketing or whatever data mining that they are doing, and they never tell me what they are using it for.
Right.
And
exactly.
how my privacy is being impacted. So how and where does it show up in the report?
Well, if you go, again, if I was to go through every single question we look at, and sort of, I would be doing a 3-hour presentation. But we have a question where we're looking at, is Google clearly disclosing with whom they're sharing their information? And they got a very low score last year. And I haven't seen any indication that they're going to, substantially improve their score this year so far, although we're still doing the research. So yeah, we're as I said in our scoring, kind of the companies that are doing the best in our ranking are still failing. So there's a lot of work to do. What we're trying to do with this is break it down, and rather than just say it's all hopeless and they're just bad, to break down specific questions of what is this company informing users about, what are they not informing users about, and then take that to the company and say, look, you did not so well on this, and here's our suggestion for what you should do differently. And then of course it's up to them to decide whether or not they're going to listen, or whether, if other consumer groups take the information and go to them, whether over time that might have an impact. But our hope is that, if you go into the data and you can kind of see what questions we're asking and how companies were evaluated, that's at least the beginning. We're not a regulator. We can't force the companies to change other than to kind of expose in a very granular fashion what they are and are not doing and how they compare to each other. So, yeah, but everything you say is indeed a problem. And so we evaluate companies that don't do those things, accordingly. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Rebecca, for your presentation. My question is about, I guess, if governments are failing to, or corporates are failing to subscribe to or meet this standard, in the extreme that humans are minority on this Internet of Things, then what can we build into the machine in terms of the code that could uphold our rights? Is there anything that we can bake into the machine?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, ultimately, I think what we're finding is that, whether it's an algorithm or whatever it is, these things are all human and created by humans, and it's pretty hard to sort of program human flaws out of things. And therefore, you kind of, I think, ultimately need to keep humans in the loop in terms of evaluating what's going on. And holding accountable the company, holding companies responsible for the technology they build. And if you build an artificial intelligence and the artificial intelligence goes and does a bunch of things, you should be liable for that, right? I should be able to hold you responsible for that, rather than the company just saying, well, the AI did it, it's not my fault. That would be a poor outcome. But it seems to be kind of going in that direction, which is somewhat troubling. I don't know. I am not an engineer, so I'm not smart enough to say, that there's some kind of human rights, programming that we could build in that would protect people. I haven't seen any evidence that there's a way to really automate this. I'm afraid it's just hard, that ultimately, the internet, who was it that said, not sure, this isn't an internet of things, it's an internet of people, right, ultimately. And who is it for, and how do we ensure that it continues to be internet for people, not an internet for, Trump, or an internet for Google, that just maximizes Google's advantage, kind of over and over again. And so, yeah, I mean, I think one of the dangers we're seeing is that a lot of the technologies are increasingly favoring incumbents and favoring people who kind of already have quite a bit of power. And so, again, permissionless innovation at the edges, that's a pretty darn good kind of of several, I think, kind of maxims to live by. But I don't know how you kind of ensure that through technology itself. Again, I'm not an engineer, but I think it's just going to require a lot of really hard work by human beings to keep companies accountable and keep ourselves accountable to each other.
Thank you, Ms. McKinnon.
Thank you.
Now may I invite, sorry to stay, may I invite Mr. Song to present a souvenir to Ms. McKinnon as a token of appreciation. Thank you. Please be seated. So up next, we will have Mr. Daniel Wang, Industry Solution Executive of IBM China Hong Kong, to share with us on device democracy, shaping the future of the Internet of Things. Mr. Wang, please.
Oh, okay, good. So my name is Daniel. My surname is Leung, L-U-N-G. I'm an IBM, a veteran IBM in IBM for over 25 years. Today I have the honor of staying here to share about some of the study that we've been doing in Internet of Things started 2014. I'm not sure whether any of the floor audience has actually read some of the IDV report. This is a series of 3 IDV reports. This is the first one, device democracy. The second one is empowering the edge. The third one is economy of things, right? It's kind of a coincidence that we were talking about, was pointing out whether we can build something into the device, right, to enable people to save certain the web, keeping the data private. And in fact, I was just mentioning about that since that it's quite difficult. So hopefully this session gives some idea how we're going to safeguard that. And to a certain extent, I think it's played well to do this territory. So we started this project about 3 years ago, 2014. So this is, we are seeing that the way the Internet of Things IoT is trending is become unmanageable. And also that it's become risky and riskier. So that's why we started this project. We have a view that the centralized approach for IoT is not viable. And it's only viable for certain part of the IoT device, which is the high value part and the short lifespan part. But for majority of the device that we would like to in time to work and make it a digitized world, probably it's a far-fetched. So we think that that needs to be some kind of rebuild. And then we also think that in order to rebuild the system, there's a certain criteria, but then we go into that. And then the technologies need to be in place for it to be scalable. And also, not only the technology, but the business model will also need to be in place as well to make sure that it's a democratized Internet of Things society, not as I would say that Internet of G, Internet of Internet of T, whatever, right? So it's an Internet of the general public. And then the design of the product utilizing this needs to be end user oriented, not technology oriented, to serve a purpose, right? And to that extent, we come up with a next gen IoT system. This is only a utopian idea. So IBM in this space is kind of become a disruptor, so to speak. Hopefully we can come up with some different view. And then I'm introducing one of the pilot projects we are doing now by the name of Blue Horizon, that hopefully will bring some light and that we can share a little bit more what we're doing, and would like to receive from the floor what's your idea, and I can bring it back to the HQ. So this is our view, right? We are now in 2014, 2015. I think the projection is about 10 billion devices. That might be about right, I'm not sure. But if you take Hong Kong, for example, each person, we're going to have 3 phones, something around that, or maybe somebody even have, you have a phone, you have a notebook, you have an iPad, just human being, but somebody has 3 phones. I think that easily you can go up with 10 devices per person. The whole world is about 7.5 billion, right? We multiply by that, so it's easily that we are somewhere in between 10 to 20 billion devices in the world. Now, and we are forecasting moving up to 2015, it will easily go up to 100 billion, including if we're going to inject light bulb with intelligence, we're going to inject toaster with intelligence, then the 100 billion marks of device on the world and on Earth is not too far-fetched. So with that scale, we don't believe a centralized approach can work. There will be a lot of problems there. So, so far, what we are seeing in the IoT world, we've been pitching IoT for a few years now. But what we're seeing, intelligence linking up to different assets, is really on the high end. The plane, the jet plane is already everywhere is IoT in your aeroplane. So people, Airbus and Boeing and all these, they are monitoring the plane. It's very, very expensive piece of equipment. So it's probably one of the highest IoT enabled piece of equipment. So we are seeing the high end, like, and also the security, utility, smart metering are all IoT enabled because energy is a big issue for the world. However, when we go to industry equipment like factory floor, you will be surprised. A lot of China's factory floor, they are not automated. You don't have visibility on the VIP. A lot of our customers still struggling with that, right? They are only at 30%. If you talk about, we've been pitching about internet TV, but so far for all the whole world of internet TV is at most 10% that people are using the internet connectivities. So our visions of having IoT device linking our physical world, become a digitalized world, is still very far away. So that's the reason. We've been wondering what are the reasons, and also that even though for peculiar reasons, even though that the spread of the IoT device is not as fast or as widespread as we like, but the projections of revenue for IoT startups still skyrocket. I mean, 10 to 20x revenues per year or per a few years. So it's kind of the hype and the reality is a bit opposite. So we are seeing that there's a few issues here. Internet of Things, in order for it to be widespread, so it's despite type of barrier that we think that needs to be overcome. High cost, lack of privacy, not future-proof, lack of functional value, and broken business model. I'll go into that a little bit more. So high cost, what do you mean by high cost? So you might think that the mobile phone has been dropped for so much now, right? Like Xiaomi, their phone is comparable to Apple, is only 1,000 odd number. You probably think that I'm crazy saying it's high cost. But then if you think about this, if the device is grown in 10-fold, 20-fold, if you're still maintaining a centralized approach to manage those devices, think about it in back-end infrastructure. How big a server you need to do? You need to implement so that it will be able to do software upload, software maintenance, make sure all the devices are safe, right? If it goes into billions, the infrastructure cost and the maintenance cost will be even more expensive. So that's what we are talking about. Cost of centralized infrastructures to manage of this widespread of devices is prohibited for this device to really rolling out in wide scale. The reasons that all the IoT devices are all centralized in phone has a particular reasons, and that I will go into that in the next few chart. And then the supporting cost of maintaining billions of devices prohibited if we're still using a centralized approach. And then the buy and sell approach of revenue and cost model probably doesn't work. It becomes still going on this way. And then the next item will be not trusted. We all know that internet is not to be trusted. So all parents here will probably first thing they will warn their children: don't put photos on the Facebook, even though they are not listening, right? A lot of misuse of information being populated in the internet, but how we can protect it? So this is another issue we need to tackle, right? And then we're talking about the third bullet is not future-proof. What do you mean by not future-proof? You just think about this longevity of the infrastructure, right? Phone is one of the least durable devices. You change phone every year sometimes. So some people change phone every 2 or 3 years. So it's not durable in a way that you can chuck out a piece of technologies and it will be ripped out and replaced in the next 2 or 3 years. You don't have to worry about how I'm going to maintain that. I'm going to update this firmware 5 years from now. You don't have to worry about that. But if I started to link the infrastructure like the like subway track or the steel bar inside the building, well, then you need to think about it because the building is going to last for 50 years, and the steel bar inside the building costs fractions, right? So, and then you can't have this rip out, a piece of sensor rip out and then change it. There's no way. So you need to think about if I need the IoT world to be widespread, how I'm going to maintain these technologies in a long period of time. It's still maintainable. I'm still able to download or upload or upgrade this firmware, so to speak, right? And then and also that the fourth point is lack of real end user value. Now people are talking about. I saw that the intelligent refrigerator, right? Turned out to be a porn station, right? And for toaster, why do I need to just for argument's sake, why do I need to hook up a toaster to internet? What function does it provide? Or people are also thinking, oh, I hook up the internet, I can put an LCD and then I can do advertisement. So you don't want to wake up and watch advertisement in the toaster, you want to watch advertisement in TV, right? So, but the real functional value is if I can hook this up in the internet and then link it up. So I'm providing you to talk about Watson's, link up to Watson's and know that, oh, this toast is burning. I probably need to pop it out before it burns. So that becomes some end user real value, right? So when we design the product, rather than emphasizing the technicalities of the advice, rather than we should put it the other way around, right? How to leverage these technologies to provide end user value. And then, unrealistic business model. We are talking about a lot of people thinking about extracting data out of IoT and sell this data to someone. Not to say that we are infringing privacy, and also if you're not Google, you're not Facebook, you're not WeChat, you need to think twice. Who will buy your data, right? So the data value is a beautiful hypothesis that needs to be validated and verified. It seems to me that data now, the data value of internet are now hijacked by the big internet guys, right? So is this a viable business model? We don't know. So in order to make these IoT technologies to be viable in the future, we think that technology strategy needs to be right. So I will go into that later on. And then you need to have a business model, makes it work, but also you need to design a product that delivers end user value, not the technology value. So this is the triangle that we come up in the report. The base layer, 3 pillar, that plays very well in today's discussions, designed to be a peer-to-peer system. So your data owned by the end user. You grant your right to people that use it. And it needs to be work in a trustless communication world, yet be able to communicate it in a trusted manner. Designed for decentralized autonomy. So probably you see where I'm going at with this pitch. So at the moment, from the IBM mainframe, when it pushed out, it's a totally centralized world. Now it's kind of in a cloud world, right? So but still centralized because you centralize around the cloud. But what we are seeing or thinking, in order for the IoT world to be scalable, you need to be decentralized at the edge world or some even all the way into the device. So we are seeing this cloud to be maybe still have some one cloud, some core cloud in the center, but there were small clouds starting to spread to the edge, right? And in order to do this, we need 3 things to happen. Those 3 pillars in the base. Peer-to-peer messaging, distributed file system, device coordinations. We need a trustless peer-to-peer messaging, a secure distributed file system sharing, and autonomous device coordinations. Now, for that, especially for the autonomous device coordination, we are leveraging blockchains to do that. And in this particular scenario, we think 2014, 3 years ago, Ethereum is our only choice. So we are using Ethereum right now in our Horizon project. And distributed file sharing, we are using BitTorrent, one of the proven peer-to-peer peer-to-peer file transfer. And trustless peer-to-peer messaging, we are using TeleHash, open source, because we think that in order for the decentralized IoT world, it needs to be community-based, open source-based, so that it can be protected, everybody. So this is just going into that device autonomous type of thing. Sorry. You can actually go to the net, IBM website, IBB, to download this report. So at the end, what we want to do is that we want, so people just plug in the device, register a new device, so that and authenticate the user. They have the certificate, they have the token, so it will save. And they can create, people can come in and create their own, what we call in the blockchain world or Ethereum world, smart contract. So, and there will be a trading place or marketplace in this IoT platform that the people can buy and sell their smart contract for functionalities. So if I want to share my data, well, give me a smart contract, execute it, I have some coins, and then I'll give you my data. So that kind of idea in this new design, new architecture of this IoT. So you can have a checklist, smart contract on the automobile safety, see whether the driver is driving autonomously. And with the smart contract, you can actually coordinate with it itself so that it can have one smart contract trigger another smart contract, so that machines can collaborate with each other to produce something meaningful to the end user. So with that, end user will define the policy. The device will execute based on that policy. And the manufacturer, based on the IoT, infrastructures, then they will sense that which device is actually failing, and they can automatically send message either to a service provider or a third-party service provider to do the third-party maintenance. So it will offload the manufacturer's manufacturing cost or maintenance cost for that device in a long period of time. So in that way, you can drive down the cost, hopefully. Right? So that's the idea. So that's hopefully with that, it will give you a democracy of devices. Now, move up to the next, I think I've run out of time. I might need to skip through it. Now, move to the next step will be some business model that we need to think of. We are thinking that the business, one specific IoT technology will not be able to serve the value, and probably you need to tie in different IoT service vendor to piece it together. So that's what. So in the structure itself, you need to be able to discover. That's why we need to have a registration. You need to discover the service, you need to use it, and at the same time you can pay for it. At the moment, in the internet world, we do it now, right? And we think that with the advance of IoT technologies, we can check this little sensor or whatever technology it is, with a car, with a house, with a key, that you can check the physical world and link the physical world into your digital world. Then you can discover the services provided. You can pay for it and use it through the fabric. But the problem of today is that these things are not talking to each other. So everyone is executing its own way and creating its own IoT, and then they are not able to collaborate. So hopefully in the future we can do that. And this is a few scenarios that we depict up with regarding to the business model. Like for example, these machines owned by somebody, if they are not using it, with the sensor, with the intelligence, it will broadcast, I'm free in between 3 to 4 o'clock. Somebody can book it and download a smart contract token into his phone, and then he can go into that machine and scan it and then use it. Right, and then they can build it at the back using the transfer of the ether or token. So Likewise, for this machine sensing itself has some problems. The erratic spin that we probably need to replace. Then it will, through the blockchain and the registration, it will discover who is the service provider. It will send a request to the service provider, execute a contract, ask the service provider to bring in the part, come in and fix it. Once it fixes it, then at the back, then it will check it's okay, then it will transfer it, then they pay, right? So that's the idea. And take one step further, like, say in places, probably this will not happen in Hong Kong, but in places like China or maybe US, if you sense a power surge, then if they charge by season, by time of day, in terms of power, then it will be more expensive to draw electricity power out of to drive and washing machines. In the US and China, some places, they can actually take back into the solar panel or the microgrid system to use the direct power through that. In that way, they can save a bit more money. Right. So in net, we are thinking that with the new design of business model, it can probably unlock excess capacity and create real-time digital marketplace and enable a radical repricing of the credit and risk, improve operation efficiency, and integrate digitally the digital value chain, right? So hopefully with that, it will create us an equitation of the physical world. So we know we can leverage all the capacity of the physical world to the extent that can make the world a better place and be more efficient. At the end, then all of this done, then we can go talk to the peak. The peak is how to design a product that fit for user rather than for technology's sake, right? So I don't want to jump into that anymore. So but the thought, the architectures that we just thought about will not be fit for everything. It's fit for a particular thing. So we try to put IoT into form for it. And that particular design or that particular thought probably will fit for longest term cost structure with a higher longevity and with the lower cost operating cost or acquisition cost. Now for high cost, long life asset, it will probably somewhere on the hybrid side, right? And the mobile phone is actually on the top right hand corner, right? So in order for the world to be a fully digitalized world, we think that the decentralized approach will be more viable. And then the way that we design that, there's this already designed blueprint, already done. We design, for you to have a very low-end IoT device, it's not feasible for you to have a high computing power. So we design it into three peer. There's a light peer, a standard peer, and a peer exchange. The peer exchange is where the marketplace is, or the smart contract. The standard peer will be some kind of node, and the light peer is needs some kind of standard peers to serve because of the lack of computation and storage capacity. Right? And this is what we drawn up in our design blueprint. So the IOS is open source, the data storage database, and we will also interface with some kind of power to take in additional functionality like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the messaging, and we use hash, device coordination, we use Ethereum, and file sharing and all this. Okay. And over top, you see this device edge cloud is what I call the satellite clouds. We still have a very centralized cloud in the middle. The centralized cloud, what we see, it will become a peer exchange cloud. So it will be where the major marketplace is, but then there will be different satellite cloud push into the edge. The analytics and everything will be done at the edge. And then the edge satellite cloud will actually connect it to the devices. So I would like to spend a few minutes to introduce the Blue Horizon. This based on that thought, we come up with a decentralized autonomous edge computing paradigm by the name of Blue Horizon. This is the URL. Please visit that. And in fact, if you are hobbyists, if you like, you can experiment with that. Just get a Raspberry Pi, hook up to that, and you can collect the information and contribute to that. And you can see that your information is actually being shown somewhere else. So the reasons for these are because we think that data is explosive. It's in an explosive stage. And we have data doubling every year right now. And a lot of those data, if you don't capture and analyze right away, probably over 5 minutes, there's no more value in it, right? So that's one of the drivers. The other driver, of course, is because of all the issues that we've talked about. So we think we need to empower the edge as much as possible, at the same time give the flexibility and the visibility. And this is kind of how it works. Like we are using Lumens at the core with the Watson services for this all the greatness of the machine AI and cognitive. But at the end, at the edge, we're pushing all the some of the intelligence to the edge so that it can execute and do the analysis on the spot. So these are some of the functions that the Blue Horizon is providing. And just to show, and the Blue Horizon rationale is that traditional analytics and processing, if human beings doing it, problem-based. And hopefully, if we can leverage the cognitive and streaming analytics with the IoT based on event processing, we can analyze and capture those information. If not in minutes or in milliseconds, it will be in seconds or minutes. Hopefully, we can capture the essence of value of data before it actually valued us. So, so this is the vision that what we are seeing. Hopefully, we have even satellite cloud and linking up with the exchange, and then the devices are circling around this satellite cloud. This is one of the examples that we depict. Software, SDR is a software-based radio that we are piloting in the US. Then you can just buy one of these and hook it up into a Raspberry Pi. And then we have a GitHub instruction you can download and run it, plug it into the system, register the device, then it will register. And some of the apps can actually, if you have if you grant the right, some of the apps can actually capture data that you captured through this radio and show it up in some of the sample apps that we demo in the Blue Horizon browser website. So this is one of them. So it sounds scary, but it's, for some reason, this is a monitoring of the radio station. Right? Capture all the sounds through the antenna, and then we're going to filter it through the Watson's speech analysis program. And with that, we are able to pick up all the tags, and we leverage the Bluemix Watson's API for deep machine learning to analyze the sentiment. For obvious reasons that Donald Trump is related to negativity. Right? So this is already being done. I encourage you, if you are curious and interested, go and play around this. At the moment, this project is still in internal testing, piloting stage. It's not a product, it's not an offering yet, but people are welcome to go in. There's our full documentation there. All right, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. And now we'll move on to the Q&A session. Any questions?
Hi, thank you for this, Senator Sullivan here. I really like your pyramid and this observation about the need for the peer-to-peer architecture. But I'm worried a little bit about how you convince people to get there, because you pointed out before that the price earnings ratio, or just even the price future earnings ratio on a lot of Internet of Things companies is kind of absurd. And so it's encouraging a market that goes the other direction, right? Because most of those companies think that their value all comes from owning all of this data and being up in their own personal control. And the market seems to think that too. So how do we convince the market to change its incentives so that people start building and deploying these peer-to-peer systems as opposed to the centralizing ones that you think are not sustainable?
Okay, this is a good question. That's my question, to be honest. I think technology itself will not solve this problem. When I was sitting down there listening to Peter's question and Rebecca's answer, I think technology needs to couple with culture. And nobody will think that open source will be mature at this stage right now. Right? 30 years ago, I didn't think that mainframe is the king. So I'm going to monetize everything. But right now, what's happening? I mean, open source is actually taking over, right?
Yeah.
So it might take a while, and it might take the same open source spirit coming in. So I don't know, because we are in the exploring stage. We are piloting this, so that's why I encourage everybody to go in and play around this to see if this makes sense. I think it takes a concerted effort.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Lan. I invite Mr. Song to present a souvenir to Mr. Lan. Thank you. So we will have a coffee break from now on till 4 p.m. And our lucky draw session will come after the conference. So presentations will resume afterwards. So please enjoy yourself, and I'll see you after the break.
I was all excited. Yeah, that way. reason we never wanted to talk about
I really wanted to talk about
咪廁所嚟。
Hello everyone, we will start in 2 minutes and please be seated. Thank you. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everyone has enjoyed their brief coffee break. And just another quick reminder of our lucky draw session. Our beautiful ISOCHK lucky draw session will come after the conference. So, so may I invite our next plenary speaker, Ms. Glacier Huang, spokesperson of Keyboard Frontline. Glacier will share with us on the Internet of Things privacy threats to ordinary users. So please welcome Glacier to the stage.
I would first love to thank Internet Society for inviting me and having me here to share our thoughts with you. I'm Glacier Huang, the spokesperson for Keyboard Frontline. Keyboard Frontline is actually an activist netizen group that was founded in 2011. We devote ourselves to try to make Hong Kong's internet a more safe and a more open space for every Hong Kongers here. So I would love to start right now. So IoT can be expected to contain a huge number of sensors collecting and passing on data about environmental conditions, psychological measurements, and machine operational data. In addition to the computing devices that consumers use today, such as laptops, game consoles, and smartphones, there will be many devices and appliances with embedded processors running applications that people make use of. Many of these smart things will also be capable of actuation to take physical actions as a result of application control. Smart things are emphasized to provide healthcare, domestic functions, entertainment, and many new uses not yet identified. IoT is expected to enable mass participation of end users, which is Hong Kongers in this context, on mission-critical services. Smart objects are not only drivers for change in terms of content and applications, given their ability to potentially change and function because they can be digitally enhanced and upgraded. They may require disruptive potentiality that could lead to serious consequences. And if IoTs are introduced into Hong Kong promptly, then there will be several privacy threats towards users. First of them is enabling unauthorized access, surveillance, misuse of personal information, inadequate law enforcement, and lack of awareness in personal privacy. First, on IoT devices, as with desktop or laptop computers, a lack of security could enable intruders to access and misuse personal information collected and transmitted to or from the device. For example, new smart televisions are becoming more popular in Hong Kong, and it enables customers to surf the internet, make purchases, and share photos similar to a laptop or desktop computer. Like a computer, any security vulnerabilities in these televisions could put the information stored on or transmitted through the television at risk. If smart television or other smart things at home store sensitive financial account information, passwords, and other types of information, an authorized person could exploit vulnerabilities to facilitate identity theft or fraud. Thus, as consumers install more smart devices at home, they may increase the number of vulnerabilities an intruder could use to compromise personal information. In Hong Kong, most Hong Kongers or households actually lack the knowledge on how to encrypt or protect their devices. So it is of high risk that they will leak their own personal information. Second, security vulnerabilities in particular device may facilitate attacks on consumers' network to which it is connected, or enable attacks on other systems. For example, a compromised IoT device could be used to launch a denial of service attack. Denial of service attacks are more effective the more devices the attacker has under control. As IoT devices proliferate, vulnerabilities could enable these attackers to assemble large numbers of devices to use in such attacks. Another possibility is that a connected device could be used to send malicious emails. Thirdly, Unauthorized persons may exploit security vulnerabilities to create risks to physical safety in some cases. Hackers are able to hack remotely into 2 different connected insulin pumps and change the settings so that they no longer deliver medicine. These potential risks are exacerbated by the fact that securing connected IoT devices may not be more challenging than securing a home computer for 2 main reasons. First of all, companies in Hong Kong entering the IoT market may not have experience in dealing with security issues, as IoT is not actually that popular in Hong Kong yet. Second, although some IoT devices are highly sophisticated, many others may be inexpensive and essentially disposable. In those cases, if a vulnerability were discovered after manufacture, it may be difficult or impossible to update the software or apply a patch. If an update is available, many consumers may never hear about it. As in Hong Kong, most of the consumers will consume the device and that's all for them. They won't care about if there's any updates or if there is any potential bug in the devices, and they will never try to fix it. And the other concern is surveillance. Powered by location-based services, IoT systems have the potential to enable a systematic mass surveillance and to violate the personal privacy of users, especially their location privacy. Overview some of the existing location privacy issues found in mobile devices. Particular attention is paid to the current access permission mechanisms used on smartphones. Note that the actual privacy issues on mobile platforms should be inherited by IoT and integrated with other static platforms. As a result of these alleged failures, hackers or even the police were able to access live feeds from consumer security cameras and conduct unauthorized surveillance of infants sleeping in their cribs, young children playing, or adults performing daily activities. There is a piece of news lately that found that most Hong Kong households with security camera at home are not aware of their daily activities are actually watched by strangers. They're not aware that the security cameras contain backdoors for hackers to easily hack into and monitor their daily lives. And moreover, Hong Kong police is no longer trustworthy in Hong Kongers' mind. The surveillance actions are not under the regulation of the ICSO, and infringing public privacy only results in mild punishments. A few years back then, the police was found out that they are contacting foreign hackers in order to purchase a new hacking system for civilian uses. Moreover, surveillance on WhatsApp, Telegram, on other non-conventional telecommunications are not under regulations of the ICSO. It makes it hard to believe that IoTs will not become a mass surveillance system if the ICSO has not updated or the police does not change their surveillance practices. Moreover, police or other law enforcement actually had made numerous data requests to ISP and OSP in the recent years. So it makes us worry that if the police can make requests on ISP and OSP at free will, and what will happen to personal information after IoTs is implemented in Hong Kong promptly. The next concern is misuse of personal information. The information collected based on object identifiers, sensor data, and the connection capabilities of IoT system might therefore reveal information on individuals, their habits, location, interests, and other personal information and other preferences stored for ease of use in systems. In combination with data available from other services or sources, data mining activities might even create knowledge of individuals that might not be revealed by separately examining the underlying data sets. Increased concern relate to failure of electronic identification and identity theft. A recent example for this problem can be found in implementations of contactless credit cards, from which the name and card number can be read without any authentication. With these data, it is possible for attackers to purchase goods with the identity and bank account of the card holder. And there are cases about health-related implications. Rapid advancement of IoTs has led to an increasing number of portable devices and sensors that enable various e-health scenarios, such as remote patient monitoring. It is expected that the Internet of Things will create significant impact to future delivery of healthcare. However, high dependability on the IoT technologies and e-health creates significant security and privacy risks. In particular, there are risks with respect to patient identification and reliability of collected information. Moreover, the modern e-health solutions based on IoT are heading towards open, interconnected environments which collect and rapidly exchange sensitive data, making the problem more difficult. In addition, in some cases, the physical integrity of a person might even be at risk. For example, it could be the case of active or passive security function used in a car, or the things used in the health sector. The information gathered from IoT things used in health application could also reveal that the person suffers from specific disease, and this could be used for physically attacking this person. With smartphone becoming too popular in Hong Kong, actually people rely too much on the health apps or things like that on their phone, making it actually very dangerous for their own personal data to be leaking. If someone really intends an attack, it is very easy for them to success. For traceability, profiling, or unlawful processing, the increased collection of data may raise issues of authentication and trust in the objects. In addition, it should also be noted that by using information collected about and from multiple objects related to a single person, that person may become more easily identifiable and better known. And another problem here in Hong Kong is that there is inadequate law enforcement. The current privacy ordinance is not up to date at all. It is said that it should be updated for the past decade, but still there is no recent update yet. And the data retaining period of data holders are not clear. They have not yet stated a very clear data retaining period, which put personal information of local Hong Kongers as risks. Moreover, there is the service provider's practice. In Hong Kong, data holders' practices are not as good as those in other countries. Keyboard Frontline and the Chinese University recently started a project called Access My Info, which is the localized version of Access My Info from Citizen Lab in Toronto. We contacted telecommunications companies to ask for our own personal information, and the reply is not ideal at all. First of all, they asked us to pay a sum of money in order to get our data back, and all we get is 2 A4 pages with not many information you can have. We cannot have our IP address or any other information that they have. All they give us is the most basic information, for example, my name, my Hong Kong ID number, etc. So it is worrying that if IoTs is implemented in Hong Kong promptly, how will those service providers respond to our data requests? Are they ready to reply our requests, or will they unwillingly give our information back? And there is also inadequate regulations and enforcement on IoT or other smart devices in Hong Kong now. Although the PCPD, our privacy department, is trying very hard to promote business practices that is related to personal information, service providers are actually not paying much attention and are reluctant to respond to such requests. And this is the last concern we have, but this is actually the most important one. Hong Kongers cannot care less about their own data. If you go onto the street and ask them, do you know where the data went? I think 10 out of 10 will tell them they don't care and they don't know. In Hong Kong, Hong Kongers actually lack privacy awareness. They do not pay attention to where the data went, who has their data, or they don't even try to limit how many data they give out. For example, if they download an app, all they do is, I agree, and then they download the app. They actually never, ever read those privacy statements. This is one of the very, very serious problems in Hong Kong. Because with poor data protection practice, no matter how good the regulations or how good the practices of the service providers are, their data will still go under protected because they give consent to every services and they give out their data freely. So these are the objectives we hope to be attained in Hong Kong before IoTs are implemented in Hong Kong. We would love to urge IoT service providers to create a safe and secure IoT system. We hope that RFID Traffic Impact Assessment Framework would be applied in Hong Kong if IoT services are provided. And we hope that the PCPD will urge the government to update the PCPO, which is the Privacy Ordinance, in order to have better regulations on personal data of Hong Kongers. And last but not least, and this is of vital importance, that education should be carried out in Hong Kong. And everyone should make an endeavor to try to protect the data and start to care about where the data went. And this is all I've got today. Thank you.
So now let's move on to the Q&A session. Any questions? Mr. Wong.
Thank you, that was a great presentation, enjoyed it tremendously. Can I ask something? How are you funded? I mean, is this purely voluntary effort? This is really great. Where did you guys come from? What was the thinking?
Keyboard Frontline was founded in 2011. We now have 4 members, and we are only our designer is paid, so the others are all volunteers. So it started more or less like an interest group. We started because of the copyright ordinance in 2012. So we decided to go against the government because we think that legislation will hinder freedom of speech on the internet, and we carried on and we expand our missions to promote a more healthy internet in Hong Kong.
Second follow-up question. Why an F5 key? What's special about F5?
I read it like when I was doing my research for this talk. I read about this is. I didn't go into great details, but I read from the internet and the resources I've got from the library saying that this is actually the framework that the EU sets. It's good and it gives good protection to IoTs systems. So I think this would be a very good system to be implemented in Hong Kong.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we've got one more question from.
You're not alone in Hong Kong as far as not being interested in any kind of safety as far as using smartphones or anything. In mainland it's the same. Do you have an explanation why Chinese in general are not really interested in what happens to their data in comparison to the US or Europe?
I think this is because we have not yet experienced something like Snowden. Because as far as I'm concerned, I started hearing about transparency reports and transparency-related ideas after the Snowden issue back in America. So I think we have never witnessed firsthand of how big data can actually hinder our lives. The worst case Hong Kongers ever heard is the Octopus company, our smart card system, selling our information to PR companies. And it did create a little fuss, but it was like in 1 week time, everybody forgets about it. So I think we have, because Hong Kongers have never experienced how big data can change our lives. We have never been under, or we never acknowledge that ourselves are actually under some mass surveillance. So most of them don't pay much attention to their own data.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, thank you, Glacier. Sorry, please stay, and I invite Mr. Song to present to you a souvenir. Thank you. So now we will have Dr. Dae-ho Kim, professor of Inha University in Korea, to share more on hyper-connected society and the Internet of Things. Dr. Kim, please.
the next page button. Right, yes. Yes, congratulations to President University in ISO Hong Kong. Yes, my name is Kim from Korea, and of course I'm from academia, but also I'm a board member of KT, Korea Telecom, and I've just finished my role, responsibility, counselor to the National Supervisory Council in Korea. And also, I'm a ISO Korea chapter vice chair. But my chairman after ISO Korea was very responsible for the new role. So I'm not very new. I'm not very familiar with the ISO responsibilities. But anyway, the chairman, chairwoman actually, she's very well. And I think that this is sort of an epilogue. This is the last presentation. I'm sure that you are already tired of many ideas, presentations, and something like that. And so, but I think that in terms of epilogue role, I'd like to share with some general and comprehensive thought for the IoT, not just for the security or safety issues, because you have already heard many things on this issue. The most presenters talked about security and safety issues on IoT. I think that in developing or in proceeding IoT to the society, and to the global world as well, the public-private cooperation is crucial. This is the theme of my thinking on the IoT, not only just for IoT, but also on the global information society, the preparations. And so I'd like to start with the first industrial revolution. I think this probably most of you heard about it this year, and then and also I'll introduce for the some projects of IoT for hyper-connected society in Korea as cases. And yes, this year we started from Switzerland that we are entering the fourth industrial revolution. What? Already fourth? Yeah. So my probably most asked, what is the first and second or third already if we are entering the fourth industrial revolution? And World Economic Forum explained like that. Most of you know that. Yes, the first one from the steam engine in the 18th century, and then 19th century from electricity, and in 1990s, and already it started from 1969, but it's not the real year, I think. So I don't know why they suggest 1960 as a pinpoint to the industrial revolution. I don't agree with that. Anyway, in the 1990s, electronics and internet provide a new area to the world. It's true, it makes sense. And then the fourth is defined by their definition, cyber-physical systems. Cyber-physical system, what is that? Is it real, or which influence will it give to us? Because interestingly, already another expert, who is Jeremy Rifkin, explained that we are now in the midst of the third industrial revolution, not fourth. So just the third, and just the third is the start. So still is far to go. And then, so what is the characteristics of fourth industrial revolution. And then in so doing, the forum suggests the 6 megatrends. From these categories that they differentiated, now is the first industrial revolution area. And I think that these megatrends that suggest also make sense to explain the different characteristics of the categorization of the industrial revolution. Because they suggest that these 6 megatrends, people and the internet, yes, because the wearable and implemental technologies enhance people's digital presence, and then also people and the internet are connected heavily. Interconnectivity is one of the key concepts of a society. Okay, and then second, communications and storage area. Yes, of course. Ubiquitous computing, ubiquitous communication is also is a sort of a cliche. But anyway, here we can understand this a bit with that. And third one is IoT. Yes, this is the topic of our symposium. And AI and big data and sharing economy. So all these features bring a shift toward the networks and platform-based social and economic models to the sharing economy. Yes, it's true. And finally, all the matters, everything is digitized. Yes. So from these the explanations, yes, because these 6 megatrends are combined together, and then we think we sort of agree with that this area is becoming different from the previous the situation. I don't argue the industrial revolution, but anyway, these trends showed different area and different period to us, not only us, but also to the things together. And among these 6 trends, yes, IoT is the basis of this shift. Because IoT brings together with all these trends. And then, in so doing, just a couple of years ago, Michael Porter explained that we are now from the computing area in the 1960s and 70s, and through the internet area in the 1980s and 1990s. Now we are entering the IoT area. The Michael Porter, I agree with his categorization. His category, the area by these 3: computation, internet, and IoT. And he emphasized IoT's role in not only for the just industry, but also as a whole world and the society. But as you know, IoT is not new. Already a decade ago, we expected that. But in the past, do you remember that we called M2M, and sometimes, and then after that, the concept of IoT emerged, and so we found that unlike M2M, it expanded to the things and humans. Of course, when you say IoT, it is suggested that the emphasis changed from human to things by these ICT developments. As you know, the devices, decrease of system cost, and then faster network speed. So, in a way, yes, IoT is the core component to change our society. So, this slide is also from the World Economic Forum, and then they surveyed the global experts, and then it showed the year-to-year development of the some ICT characteristics imposed by the IoT. And So we can see 2021 and robots provided mostly not only in the industry, factory, but also to other society, including home and others. And then 2012, yes, 2023, 2024, something like that. Yes, this is, as you can see, it is the annual development. Well, so from this explanation, from this chart, anyway, we are going to the different society from previous one in many ways. So we can define this society in many other concepts, other words. But one of them is hyper-connected society. Hyper-connected, because interactivity and interconnection expanded to all world, including industry and all of our lives, and even in our lives can be mingled with to these ICT developments. So I agree with that also. Yes. So hyper-connected society is probably one of the key concepts to define our society, and then because our presence is becoming a digital presence. As discussed in the morning session, one presenter showed that we leave digital footprint everywhere. Yes. Just imagine that having a presence in the digital world has evolved rapidly in the past, not just like 20 or more years. Let's think about just 10 years ago. 10 years ago was just the year of 2006. In the 2006, we had a mobile phone, but it's not smartphone. And email address, yes. At that time, we had email address. And perhaps some of you had personal website to upload. That's it. But after 10 years, this presence expanded heavily. And so most people have more than one digital presence. Not just the email address or the mobile phone number, but we heavily involved in the, for instance, Facebook page, Twitter account, LinkedIn profile, Instagram account, and many more. And of course, including other things, even just very old-fashioned black box or easy-pass, something like that devices have our digital presence, digital footprint. So in our very increasingly connected world, the digital life is linked with the person's physical life heavily. And then it is possible by computing. Yes? So already the IoT probably. And then I think that IoT and all these developments can be seen in 3 places. So I'd like to share with my idea that IoT can be developed in 3 places. The first one is home. Yes, home. Of course, smart home is not a new concept. Already 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, some companies, some firms developed a smart home project, like Samsung, or Sony, and LG, proposed smart home projects many years ago. But at that time, smart home was not implemented. But nowadays, we have different kind of different situation. We cannot prepare. We cannot compare with the previous the project. And IoT, because IoT is already can be seen in home in many ways. IoT already changed the home already. So, very fast changes already occurring in home automation, enabling people to control light, shades, ventilation, air conditioning, audio and video, security system, and many home appliances. And let me show you later on one company's cases that already in Korea 500,000 homes are connected to a smartphone. So home is the first place that IoT is implemented. The second one is city, yes, of course. This picture is the Songdo. Songdo is which is located in Incheon, and of course not only Songdo but also Singapore and Barcelona, even Hong Kong is preparing for the smart city project in many ways. But progressive development happened to the city nowadays. So these cities are already implementing many new data-driven services, including intelligent parking solution, smart trash collection, and intelligent lighting in the street, something like that. So second place that the IoT is implemented is home. City. And third one is car, I think. Yes, of course, drive cars, you can see already Google, Audi, and even Tesla will implement from this electric car to the driverless cars, of course. But more than that, interestingly, in Korea, car black box is becoming popular. So every car now fix a small camera type black box in the car. Why? Because a weekly TV program shows that how dangerous human driver is. For instance, in the expressway, which is empty in front of the driver, it's empty. But suddenly, a car twisted, and then it crashed. It's very crazy. The human is crazy. It shows that, and you can see many other cases that. So viewers notice that we human drivers are not rational, sort of crazy industry. So they think that driverless cars is better than the car that human beings drive. So it changed the mind, not just for only the technological issues, but also it changed the human mind on cars, on human beings. It showed quite different conception, different mind of our society and humans together. So the first one, I'd like to argue that the first place is home, and second city, and the third one is car. All of these bring together our economy is going to the sharing economy. Yes, already sharing economy was defined by many experts, like for instance Jeremy Rifkin. All right, okay, Jeremy Rifkin emphasized sharing economy even will collapse our capitalism society. But anyway, yeah. But whether capitalism will expire or not is not important. But anyway, sharing economy's features will expand to our society and economy because by of this combination of developments. And also, yes, all these trends have pros and cons, as we know, yes. It has many positive impacts it will improve quality of life. It increases access to education, healthcare, and any other services. And it also expands market size, and it increases efficiency or rising productivity, as we discussed in the morning session and afternoon session. Also, but also we must cope with the negative impacts. Everybody is talking about privacy, surveillance issues, cyber attacks, crime, vulnerability. As we know, Mirai discussed in the morning section, we must cope with it. So it is true that we must make a balance between these positive impacts and negative impacts. In other words, the rewards and risks of the IoT area. But it's true. So the global society goes to the hyper-connected society, including all of these issues together, whether it is positive or negative. It's the situation of the current situation that the IoT and other all the ICT bring about to bring about. And in so doing also, yes, Korea is preparing for the hyper-connected society in many ways. In so doing, the Korea's the strategy is follow the PPP model, private and public sector, public partnership model. In the past, the Korea was developed by the public sector leadership, and then nowadays the private sector developed and emerged as a key player in many ways in the Korean society. And nowadays, the combination and working together of private sector and public authorities could be an important tool for the future development. So this private-public partnerships, the model applied in the preparing for the IoT area. So the first, we emphasize the importance of network. For IoT to be successful, network's role is crucial. Probably you know that in the past, previously, we thought that network is just a dumb pipe. Yes, we put information and the services into the pipe. But nowadays, network is not just a dumb pipe. Network can be intelligent network. Of course, intelligent network concept was initiated many years ago, but from the development of combination of AI and other things, network can be intelligent one. And then network with intelligence provides advanced infrastructure for the fourth industrial revolution. So importantly, we dealt with, for instance, cybersecurity as exposed for the vaccine issues. But with the intelligent network, even cybersecurity can be protected at the network stage, not afterwards other implementation of policies. So at the very network stage, we should add intelligence to the network, and then even that network can be implemented as a tool to protect the cybersecurity and cyber crimes. And also, when you provide virtual reality, augmented reality, even UHD contents, it is crucial that network should be intelligent. So this network intelligence project is very important in Korea, and then we think that this network intelligence, for instance, Giga Internet, is very crucial, vital for national economy and society together. So, firstly, we emphasize the network's role. So, again, in the past, we regarded the network just as a speed or bandwidth, but now we changed our the concept to the network, and the crucial concept is intelligence to network. And then some companies, for instance, some telcos provide IoT services, but they strategy are a little bit different. For instance, we have in Korea we have 3 big telcos: KT, LG U+, and SK Telecom. And then, interestingly, the KT and LG U+ focused on home IoT, IoTs at home in many ways. And then SK Telecom focused on industry IoT. So it's not defined by the public authority like government, but naturally in the market they categorize differently. And then I think that this combination is better than before, because these companies focused on the home and the other is emphasize the industry IoT. So I think it's a very good combination of the companies. And for instance, KT this year this is the Giga IoT health bike, and then this health bike added intelligence, very small amount of intelligence to the bike, and then it can give information, many health information and many information to us. This is combined with mobile applications, even television. So there's one example of the IoT was used to health, of course at home, and then KT they provided other home appliances like the IoT health, the golf putting services, and many things, sports services. And also the LG U+, they provided these IoT at-home services. Again, as I said, already 500,000 homes are connected by these home IoT services. And then, I'm sorry, it is in Korean, but this IoT at-home service by LG provide a combination of the door lock and energy meter switching and gas bulbing and something like that. So already we enjoyed the smart home services, but again, these home smart services can be implemented very recently, actually. Even LG began these services 10 years ago, but during these last 10 years, their services failed. But including the IoT, they revised the services and then revitalized them. So nowadays, the people at home enjoy these IoT services. So IoT already showed the convenient device at home. And then SK Telecom, SK Telecom focused the industry, but not only just for the industry whole, but also they all provide other service. This case is one of them. Jeeper. I saw that in the afternoon session, the one presenter showed the Easy 120, Easy 120. Yes, this is similar. Yeah. But smaller than that, and then is as a necklace type. So the very similar functions of tracking and the notification device to the Easy 120. And but via the private sector, these companies provide the IoT services. But in the public sector, public service, we also apply the IoT. For instance, in some cases, but among them I showed the two cases. One is the decision midnight bus route in Seoul was done by smartphone usage big data. So it is a very good example of how we use the IoT and big data services to the public purpose, public interest. And then this service is very successful. And then this recently, the KT Telecom suggested to the global telcos to cooperate for infectious disease prevention system in order to reduce disease and MERS, Zika virus, Ebola, and using the IoT and big data together. So I think the telecom company in Hong Kong already think about KT's proposal, and other major telcos around the world considering how to cooperate with this public purpose and public interest of the global society. Like this, already we use IoT for these public service, and then therefore IoT is very valuable in public service. It enhances many areas: transportation, health, lives, and many things. And finally, I missed one slide. As for the IoT risk, yes, the reward and risk are all important to develop IoT services into the future. So as for the IoT risk, the Korea has a policy this year that one of the public organizations wholly is in charge of IoT security and safety issue. And the organization's name is KISA, Korea Information Society Agency. KISA, probably some of you know that, yeah, KISA was originally established to promote in the internet industry around 20 years ago. But this year, very importantly, KISA took away all the industry promotion roles. They throw away, yes. And then they focus only on protection of safety and security issues. So they will change it, not now, but they will change their name, Korea Information Society Agency, to the Korea Information Security Agency. So KISA was assigned to wholly focus on security and safety issues. In so doing, not only just the KISA, and also the telcos and internet portals and all the firms work together to protect privacy, cyber hacking, cyber crimes, etc., etc. Because we, probably all of you agree that risk and negative impacts that the IoT and other AI and all the ICT development bring about are very crucial to our society and human beings. So Korea also emphasize the security and safety issues that IoT brings about. Therefore, Korea is coping with IoT-centered industrial revolution by these public-private partnership models in many ways. But Korea is also, but not Korea is not not mature society in terms of IoT development. Korea is also is in the starting point now of the IoT society, but we are driving force to the IoT-centered, hyper-connected society. So the Korean government and local authorities and private companies, private sectors, and academians are going together, work together for that the directions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. And now we'll have our Q&A session. Is there any question?
In one of your slides, you described the network that is connecting IoT here as an intelligent network. Now, when I use the phrase intelligent network, I'm referring to the telephone system of the 1980s. What do you mean by the intelligent network?
Yes. Again, as I said, the internet network is not new concept, but we Korean think that the giga internet situation, for instance, fifth generation wireless service or wireless network can be different from the first to fourth generation networks and previous networks. And so at this point, I'm not a technical person, so I cannot explain the technical issues. But at this point, we are not maturing the intelligent network. And fifth, so we are targeting to fifth generation wireless network as one example of intelligent network. So, for instance, these three companies are developing the technical issues to add intelligence in many intelligent features to the network, and then so probably in 2018 at the Pyeongchang Olympic, they will experiment this fifth generation network as a first stage of intelligence network. So we will see what is the real intelligence network is in 2 years time. Yes. So anyway, I'm sorry, I cannot explain the technical issues to why the intelligent network is different from the previous ones that many experiments proceeded before.
Thank you for your comprehensive presentation. You mentioned Jeremy Rifkin's work several times in your presentation, not the fourth, the third, and half show. And that was a 2014 book of the Zero Marginal Cost Society, if I'm correct.
Yes.
So my question here is, your topic is hyper-connected society. What are the political, as a democracy in South Korea, where is your thinking in terms of the political ramifications of this vision that you have for IoT? Are there any political considerations? And if so, what are they?
Actually, probably you think about some scandal of Korean government these days, yeah. But I'm sure that, and also I mean, because I have been involved in the policy, the project, the planning and implementation of this the hyper-connected society vision. It is not related to the political issues. We expert thought and prepared that whether the political issues or the government or present is, for instance, writing side or left side. Our Korean society should proceed with that direction. We define that Korean society is a digital society, and digital economy is centered society. So in so doing, we must proceed with this IoT and AI and many things features of the first industrial revolution. So it is not actually related to the politics without regard to the political arena, political issues. Our society should go to that direction. And then from next year, we'll have, next to December, we'll have the presidential election. And then at this stage we cannot expect it, but normally it is said that the government swing to another political party, and then interestingly, even the opposition party think this is very important for Korean society. So this direction cannot be changed. Yes.
Is there any more question?
So in one of the roadmap slide, you mentioned that by 2018, storage by all. Would you mind to elaborate more about the storage for all? 2018. Yeah.
Storage for all is yeah, and it is a simple idea that nowadays we can keep every information into very small devices, small USB, and then even the cloud and smart devices. So that means that the cost of storage of information decreased rapidly, and then of course, and then you can store all the information everywhere, yet like this room and outside this room we can there. So yeah, that's the meaning of storage.
We'll have one last question from Mr. Song.
Okay, Dr. Kim, thanks for your presentation, and I'm happy to see so much has already been implemented or done, in Korea in terms of implementation of IoT. Now, it brought me another issue along the way, though, is like so many services, like public services, and so many things have been done and being provided, to the public. Now, it's kind of we had this issue when Internet first came along, or World Wide Web, or all these things that we now kind of take it for granted came along, and then we had this what we call digital divide, to address, how to get the I guess the less privileged group, or maybe the elderly people, how to get them online, how to get them trained up, or equip them with the ability to utilize the internet, etc., etc. Now, is this coming like, are we creating another set of digital divide with this implementation of IoT? Because some of these, of course, like if we are talking about certain services that are completely transparent to the end user, to the human being, then it may not be so obvious, or may not have that effect. But then, if it requires the human to which I guess some are unavoidable, because after all, we are providing that service to the human being. So how do you think we should address or prevent that from happening again?
Yes, I'd like to say one thing. In the previous session, the song, the presenter emphasized the literacy issues. Oh yes, actually, Korea did the literacy program in the society in real. The government invests a lot of money to the literacy program, we call informatization literacy program, and then from this money, the rural areas and remote areas, they established the center, literacy center, and then they educated people, they educated elderly, they educated for instance, the small children and even elderly people freely. And that's why the digital divide, I cannot say the whole digital divide issues was solved, but we solved partly by this digital literacy program to the people, and we established a center to do that. And those programs are very successful. We think that because by this education program, free education program, nearly everyone can use the smart devices and the other digital appliances very easily. And then the second one is that in Korea we have education broadcasting channel, which is a public corporation. And then this channel, TV channel, also proposed and then it provided the digital literacy programs regularly. And so the government and public authorities in Korea emphasize the literacy issues, and then we did that by many projects. One of them is, as I said, the establishment of the center, and then public fund to invest in the digital literacy issues and many things. And even in the last session, a lady we talk about some of the issues in Hong Kong, and then we did that actually. We implemented those programs. So it is. I think of course I don't know whether the Hong Kong authorities provide this kind of programs or services to the public, but I suggest if not, yes, not, please do so. That's one of the solving to the very important digital divide issues and solving these problems. And of course, you can see other solutions, but it's crucial for us. So
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Now I would like to invite Mr. Song to present a souvenir to Dr. Kim. Thank you, Dr. Kim and Mr. Song. Please stay on the stage. Please stay on the stage and move a little bit forward because we're moving on to our next highlight of the conference, the panel discussion. And before we move on to the panel discussion, for those of you who were not here, I would like to give another two quick reminders. One is, once again, we're going to have a lucky draw of 2 sets of our Microsoft Xbox after the conference. And the other one is, if you would like to take the shuttle bus, please go to the place where you dropped off this morning at 6 p.m. or 6:15 p.m. Thank you. So after this panel discussion, we will have a Q&A session open up to the audience. So everything's ready. For this panel discussion, we will have Chester to moderate for us. Chester, please.
Thank you. Okay, well, like Dr. Kim was saying, I know a lot of people, you may be tired and hearing so much today for so many, this could be information overloading. But let's get into a more interactive mode. So now, well, before we begin the discussion, I may invite the panelists, Rebecca and Rob and Andrew, Mr. Baker, and Dr. Kim. Well, we do have a bigger song. I don't want to be cozy here. Okay. Now, like I said, I know you have been sitting around all day listening to our fabulous speakers talking. So now, when you do have a question, please, or comment at all, raise your hand, and our colleagues, here will be attending your question, and maybe give you a mic watch so that you can jump in. We're not going to be, I guess, holding any person like all the way to the end, and just listen to us, talking again. Well, I guess to warm things up, actually, maybe a question that I'd like to raise just to all of you, without any particular priority or splits. We mentioned a lot about how we technologies and also securities and other things, how to ensure that the implementation or the development of this IoT topic to be more exponential than it does, or how to make it work better for us, or and hopefully close up some of the issues that we discussed and raised throughout today. Now, I'm just going to put up an argument here. Like, do you think regulation would work to help in providing us I guess, I don't want to use the word secure because that's not the only thing that we really want from IoT implementation, but how to make it work for us in a way that it doesn't infringe into our rights, or give us what we want, in terms of service, in terms of better living quality, stuff like that. But at the same time, now I know Andrew doesn't think that would work, and I quite agree with your stand about like having the right incentive. I do think that works. When positive reinforcement works. well. But you know, I just want to hear your viewpoints. Who wants to go first?
So I really think that the main problem with an attempt to do regulation in this area boils down to two things. And the first one is that I don't think we have a lot of evidence that the regulations can adapt as quickly as we can invent new uses. I think that, I don't know what it was like here, but I remember growing up with the old heavily regulated...
It's quite the same.
The old heavily regulated monopoly telco. And so when I was a little kid, we lived a little bit far out, and if our telephone would break, which happened pretty much all the time, you would go to a neighbor's house and you would call the telephone company, and the response from the telephone company was, we'll be there next week. And they didn't mean we're coming next week on such and such a day. What they meant was we're coming sometime next week, sit around until we get there, and if you're not there when we show up, then your telephone is just going to remain broken. That was the answer. And I think that very heavily regulated systems tend to breed this kind of thing because there's no pressure on the system, right? The only people you can consult in order to determine whether this is an acceptable state of affairs are the regulated monopoly, because they're the only people who know. They're the only people who have any information. So that's one problem. The second thing is that it goes back to something that I guess George Orwell said, and he was actually talking about free speech, but this is, I think, generally true of technology as well, that the cultural environment is actually what matters. And if you have a culture that values free expression and free speech, you will get it regardless of what the law says. And if you have a culture that doesn't care about that free speech, then even if the law formally protects it, it will be suppressed. And the same thing happens in technology, that if you have a culture which embraces this sort of positive reinforcement of the right behavior, then you will get, you'll get a positive feedback effect. And if you have instead a culture that enables the sort of tight control inside the small group of people, then you're going to get that. And I think that we have to make a choice amongst ourselves of what the cultural result is going to be.
I'm thinking about your comment earlier today that the Internet Society favors permissionless innovation at the edge, and that heavy regulation is an attack on permissionless, an attack on innovation, an attack on the edge. And so I don't see personally how regulation is going to get you to that goal. If anything, it's going to hinder you very dramatically, I think.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I guess I have a slightly more mixed view on regulation, in that it sort of depends on what the regulation is. And I think we also need to be careful to decouple monopoly from regulation, because there is some regulation that actually prevents monopolies, right? And so it depends on what kind of regulation we're talking about. It depends on the context in which the regulation is taking place. The context in which the law is passed, the context in which it's enforced. All of that matters. And at least in the research I've been involved with, we have identified situations where, good privacy regulation in terms of data protection or regulation around, requiring security practices can actually protect people, but again, it depends on the context in which it's taking place. We've also seen privacy regulation that one could argue from a human rights perspective has gone horribly awry, with the right to be forgotten in Europe and so on. So it really depends on the context in which the regulation is taking place, and whether there's even sort of, consultation and risk assessment about what the impact of the regulation is going to be, because sometimes, laws are passed in a knee-jerk way to address a problem without really thinking through all the unintended consequences of a particular piece of regulation. So there's a lot of kind of issues around regulation, yet at the same time, I would hesitate to say we want a completely regulation-free environment under any circumstances. I think that, I think there are circumstances where protections against abuse, against crime, regulations protecting children, there are contexts in which you do need regulation, but the question is sort of what is the consent around the regulation, what is the purpose of it, what, the context in which it's formulated. So on the other hand, I certainly agree there's a lot of very bad regulation, that are sort of, or regulation that is not actually protecting people's rights, that is actually enabling abuse as opposed to, preventing it. So it's a very complicated picture, and so I would certainly say you want a lighter touch than a heavy touch, but you need accountability, you need, more thoughtfulness than I think most of our regulatory systems or political systems are able to provide at the moment. So that's part of the problem as well. So the picture is kind of complicated, but regulation is often, I think, grabbed as a solution too quickly, and without thinking through all the different impacts that it's going to have.
Yeah, Andrew, I know you want to follow up on that, but Dr. Kim raised his hand. Just need to.
Yes, it's a similar talk, and in the past, every information industry is heavily regulated, whether it's telecoms, media industry, all the information industry was regulated. But nowadays it changed, and there are many reasons. The first one is that in the past, in information industry, just very few players dominated the operations and the businesses. But nowadays, a lot of players involved in the development, not only just IoT, but also ICT all as a whole. And secondly, we passed around 100 years of regulation with issues to this information industry. And we can find out that gradually the regulations was reduced to the operations as a business. But the content of regulation has changed to just protect privacy and crime, as we mentioned this whole of these sessions. And so therefore, we have two tracks regulations applied to the information industry. The first one is that as for the business area and as for the operation in this area, probably very few regulations can be applied. But now we are moving to the regulation of protecting the privacy, safety, and security issues, and those areas are expanded and largely compared to the past experiences. So we are changing the regulation directions.
Andrew?
I'll let Andrew in a second. My expertise is not regulations or that happens.
You enforce the regulation.
Exactly, I enforce the laws. And I think Andrew was right on target there when you say, we're always playing catch up anyway with technology and the way it moves on. When I first started in the child pornography section in '96, the reason I went online as a pedophile is we didn't have alluring legislation. There was no offense for somebody to speak with me online if I was posing as a child for talking to me about wanting to have sex with me. There was nothing. My boss and I had to go to the House of Commons in Ottawa and do a presentation for the members of Parliament. And I think I was telling you this yesterday. What I did was I just went on a chat room in 1996, posed as a 13-year-old girl while I was doing my presentation. And once you see the legislators seeing all these messages go up, they finally asked me, what's going on behind you? I said, oh, these are all the pedophiles that want to talk to me and have sex with me. But we have no law here in Canada for me to do anything about them because I'm not a 13-year-old child. And the next day, the legislators were sending me proposed legislation. You know, but because they don't know about the problem either, the people who set these laws are so behind. And you know, at that time, we didn't even think of luring. When the internet came along, there was child pornography, which was an offense, and being distributed. But now we needed legislation on that. And of course, we spoke to the House of Commons in 1999. The legislation was passed in 2002. So by the time I left the OPP, the legislation that I actually helped write, I never laid a charge in the first place. It took so long to come around. So if regulation is a lot like the laws being passed, you know, you're always playing catch up anyway. So by the time you find out some sort of regulation, that's my experience anyway when it comes to, especially jurisdictional wise, every country is different, every laws are different, every freedom of speech is different, those type of things. So it would be a tough one. So my thing is you need stricter laws, but we're always playing catch up and trying to see what the future's bringing us crime-wise or what's going to happen on the internet.
So I just wanted to come back to something though that, because I want to make two things clear. The first thing is, I agree, not every regulation is bad. I think an example of this, for instance, in the data protection area, is a law that was passed, and this is not a regulation as such, it's just a law that says in the United States, if you have a data breach, you have to contact everybody. And that was a piece of legislation that came through that just forced companies, when they had one of these data breaches, to tell people about it. We don't actually know in Canada, for instance, and we don't know in Europe how often these things happen because there is no such law. And so all of the noise that has been made over the last couple of years about data breaches in the United States, they all came from this Sunlight Law. So that's an example of something where it was clearly not in the interest of the companies to release this because they thought it was in their interest to keep it quiet. So what do? We force them, with the instrument of the law, to disclose these things in order to return the balance of power back to the consumer to say, wait a minute, I gave you that data, you have to tell me what you did with it. But other kinds of regulation, and this is the distinction that I wanted to draw, right? There is this distinction traditionally between regulations and laws. The regulations are frequently made by a regulatory agency that is created by the legal framework, and then the agency makes the regulations, the specific regulations that determine these things. So it's the difference between that law that I just mentioned, say, and the FCC or the CRTC in Canada that make the spectrum decisions and so on, the detailed decisions. And the problem with those regulatory agencies is that the only people they can listen to for their information are the regulated parties, because nobody else has the necessary data. So you end up with this weird capture that is regulatory capture that is not it's not malfeasance. It's just the facts of the way this kind of thing works, and it ends up tending to protect the regulated incumbents. And this is the reason, for instance, that Tesla is spending billions of dollars building a new car. It shouldn't be that hard, but it turns out that because the automotive industry is now so expensive to get into, partly because of enormous quantities of regulation, you really have a lot to conform with, and therefore it's an industry that becomes very hard to enter. And I think one of the things that the internet has shown is that those low barriers to entry, going back to the Internet Society's permissionless innovation at the edge, are a big advantage. The challenge that we're facing, of course, is that we've now given an amplifier to malfeasant behaviors at the edge, and now we have to address that somehow.
Yes, I think I very much agree in that regards. I guess because not just because I'm from Internet Society, but also I guess I like your example of the URL very much being a positive incentive to kind of make the industry do better things. But for a short while, I was working for the Privacy Commission's office, heading one of their compliance and investigation divisions. One of the responsibilities that I had was to receive all the data breach notifications. Now in Hong Kong, we don't exactly have, the law doesn't really require data users to report every single breach. Now, but of course, public organizations are required to some extent, and then private organizations are advised to do that. And we get about 3 to 5 a week. That's like every day, almost. And we have to open check on them for about 30-something per month. Now, that was how that relates to this is I think is I really, in a way, wish that we have some like positive, to do that. But then, because we have a relatively weak privacy regulation or law here, and then how do we enforce the users to, to fix their problem? And like Rebecca was saying, it's like, I think even the UL, to some extent, regulates, certain industry, like the electronics, the appliances, so that they have to, have that logo, they have to do their tests, and of course when they don't, they stand losing the market or losing insurance or being sued. Directly, by the users. So really, I think it's this is why I can raise this question like to you all. It's like how much regulation, or if so, what kind of regulation would be able to help in that sense? Some people talk about because some academics in the privacy area talked about consumer rights or consumer regulations, and others would dive directly into privacy regulations. They should strengthen the privacy laws and control right from there. With give the authority to the DPAs, the data protection authorities, but yeah, additional views.
When you mentioned regulation, frankly, what jumped into my head was the U.S. Telecom Act of 1934 and its subsequent amendments and rewrites and so on and so forth, which is a huge compendium of literature. It covers words that can't be spoken on the radio, which we use them anyway, but I can't refer to a woman's breast according to the Telecom Act of 1934. And then classifications of different things. Part of the underlying logic behind the Telecom Act of 1934 actually had nothing to do with telecom. Had everything to do with trains and Morse code and so on and so forth. It was how you regulated a utility in the 1800s. And then they said, okay, now we've got a new utility, let's apply the same rules. And my worry, very frankly, when I hear about regulation of the internet is, okay, let's take the logic that defined train travel in 1850 and roll that forward and just drop it on top of the internet. And that causes all kinds of things. Now, yes, we certainly want to outlaw child pornography. There's a list of things that should be illegal. But those are kind of points. And what you want is some kind of regulatory framework that deals with those points and says if it hurts people, let's not do that. But leave it flexible enough that we can continue to move forward. If we suddenly can't innovate, that's the end of the market. And that's the end of most of what the internet has brought us. And that would worry me immensely.
Okay, I'd like to open the next question to the floor. Do we have any questions, comments from the floor about what we have discussed? Anybody?
Yes. In terms of those IoT devices, I talk with a lot of manufacturers, and they find it is quite complicated in long-term maintenance, because each device is made up of hardware and software, especially the software. There will be a lot of vulnerabilities coming along in this lifetime. Okay, and these devices are lasting for maybe 10 years or more. It's not like computers that we usually replace them 3 to 5 years with all the problems gone. And for these, these boxes will be put on the factory, put at home, or put in other locations. And for consumers, we find them having a very big difficulty in managing all these security risks. They are not technical, and they don't know what's inside that box. Usually in computer we know that there's some like Windows or Mac or Linux vulnerabilities coming out, and then we just issue the patch and install. But for the boxes, even the consumer don't know what's inside. And some people say that in order to manage all these, we cannot rely on the consumers, and we must have a central system that, like the food registration system. When you have a box of food or drink, on the box there is an ingredient list, and every box of drink or food, there's a registration number which you can search on the internet what's inside that. And some people propose to set such kind of centralized registry for each device. So the consumers just need to enter this number and then know what's inside the box and if there is any vulnerability, so that what they can do, or they need to replace it. Is it workable from your perspective?
Well, this is a very interesting question, because the Internet Architecture Board just had a workshop on Internet of Things software update that tends to tackle this sort of problem. And the reason that we're worried about it is exactly what you said. I mean, 5 years is a short lifetime for some of these devices, right? My parents' house was built before I was born, not very long before I was born. I'm old, and so it's about 50 years old, and most of the light switches in it have never been replaced. So there's something that is going to last for at least 50 years, and we're going to install those in houses. And you're quite right. I think that most people today do not have a theory of their light switches needing to have the software update, and I think that will probably last for a long time. So I completely agree with that observation. The one thing that is true, and maybe Pinder is going to say some more about this, but the one thing that is true is that you could create a registry of various kinds of this sort of thing, and we have lots of experience with registries of capabilities on the internet, right? Because that's, of course, what IANA registries are. They tell you various kinds of things. So we have a mechanism by which we can publish this kind of data, and then systems that get deployed can publish those things about themselves. They can advertise their capabilities, and then what you need to do is get a secure way of hooking those things up, so I won't steal your thunder about that. But there is one more thing that I want to point out. The problem is slightly worse than you suggested, because it's not only the case that you've got in the Windows machine or whatever, the ability of the thing to update itself, and you know, oh, I should update that, but also it tells you, and by the way, I need to update and I'm going to reboot in this much time, and you can say, no, I'm in the middle of a crucial thing, don't do that right now. It would be really bad if your light switch decided to upgrade itself while you had the porch light on in order to tell the fire truck where to come because of the emergency that's happening in your kitchen. But of course, if it just automatically does it, then that's what's going to happen, right? It's going to do it at the right time, and eventually one of these things is going to align badly. So there's the user interface problem. And then finally, there's the problem of the software of the companies that go out of business. At the IAB plenary a few IETFs ago, we talked about the security of these things. And I think it was Dave Taylor who was giving the presentation at the time, and he had a slide that had 10 Internet of Things device vendors on it, 9 of whom were out of business, and somebody got up to the microphone and said, "It's 10 now." So companies that are out of business are notoriously bad at delivering software updates for their products, and I think that what we'll find is that we've got this problem where we may find, this may be a place where actually regulation is going to be necessary, because if you've got critical things in the system, you ultimately have to have some sort of escrow thing by which those things can be fixed, or some sort of software release rules or something like that.
Very good question, because coincidentally, we are discussing the decentralized approach or centralized approach to the issues. But these days, most experts prefer decentralized approach to them to the centralized, because, as you know, because this approach is very similar to the topic of the one session, saying that it is democracy of device, something like that, by IBM, yes. And even though the government and the public authorities tend to take the centralized approach to them, but it could be dangerous, very dangerous, because in the IoT area, everything is connected, and then just one point, a very small point, can break everything. Therefore, when we connect each other together regularly, so we should. It can be good for us to separate the appliances and the applications, rather than just grab onto the center one. So we prefer actually decentralized. And as for your questions.
My question is about robustness. And if we move to all these old digital systems that are hyper-connected, my question to the panel is what should remain analog, if anything, and what should remain unconnected? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's hard to have a hard and fast rule, but I think we've heard of a lot of examples of things being connected to the internet just because they can be, and that's perhaps not a good enough reason. Sort of what is the utility and what is the risk, and sort of an evaluation of what that is needs to take place. And so it probably depends on what the thing is and what the purpose of connecting it would be, and what the trade-offs are, and how it's connected, et cetera, et cetera. All kinds of conditions that again depend on what the device is and how it's connected and what its purpose is and so on. But I think the point being is to just because you have the things connected doesn't mean it really has to be thought through in a very granular way, which just means you can't have a hard and fast kind of formula to apply across the board. So
I would agree, and referring to analog, analog means something is like something else. So having a circuit switch network where we're literally layering voice on electrical waves, the way we did it 1,000 years ago, that's an analog to having a human voice, a person actually sitting there talking. So you can't just say analog versus digital. You have to say also the thing that it would be an analog to, the thing that it's simulating. And I think in each of those cases, you have to ask which serves the purpose best, which minimizes the cost and the effort that's involved in doing it. And I don't see any reason that there's a one-size-fits-all. I think you make those decisions separately.
Let me tell you one example is, I think we human beings live the analog lives and the connected digital lives together. Yeah. And then even in this connected society, analog services, analog products will remain as a part of our lives and our economies. And interestingly, let's think about the music industry, for instance. And nowadays, music industry moved to the stream services. So everybody is listening to music by just the digital music source by streams. But in this situation, interestingly, for instance, LP and CD also are remaining as a very important part of the music industry. And for instance, in Korea, nowadays, LP cafe, LP used cafe are becoming popular. People go to the old-fashioned analog style and the cultural life, and then so the LP record are sold in the market, and then the new market is emerged, something like that. So I think that unconnected and analog lives can be and should be a part of our lives in the very rapidly changed hyper-connected society.
I also want to talk a little bit about this robustness question, because I think that's an interesting piece of it. And it seems to me that there are, well, I don't know anybody who's a commercial pilot anymore, but I used to know commercial pilots, and one of them had a slogan, "If it's not Boeing, I'm not going," because he thought that it was all fly-by-wire, and he didn't trust it. And the fact of the matter is that the record between these two companies problem. So it doesn't seem like, and neither one of them has a big problem, right? I mean, I can't believe the number of them that don't fall out of the sky. So we've got a very robust industry there that seems to produce very safe products no matter how they do it. And I think that really is the robustness one, and that is the thing that as a society we're probably going to have to do something about. So that might be, to go back to the earlier discussion that we were having about regulation, that might be the way forward. That what we do is we legislate ends rather than legislating means.
My question is, what is the roadmap of the smart city? The second question is, does it violate the data privacy law?
Okay, well, I think the first question, can you be more specific on that, like with the roadmap, meaning in terms of the kind of services you want to see, or the infrastructure being ready, or the legal infrastructure, regulatory infrastructure, things that
I'm talking about the macro view of a smart city.
The smart city blueprint, for example,
Oh.
is coming out.
I'm talking about the smart city. Everybody is talking about the smart city, but what is the definition of a smart city? Just like a smart home, you just put in an optic fiber and somebody say it is a smart home, but it is not. So I would like you to discuss how do you define a smart city? What is the definition? Because everybody's view is totally different.
I don't think there's a single definition. The concept of a smart city is a city that uses communication infrastructure to accomplish various purposes and to enable certain things for its citizens. It might facilitate home health care, for example, or it might facilitate universal surveillance, or a list of other things. And now there are smart city projects going on in a number of different cities around the world, one of them here. And they each have different objectives and different things that they're implementing and deploying. So there's no one roadmap.
Okay. I mean, I think Korea has.
I don't agree with you. So no single concept or single definition is not applied to the smart city. Yes, every city has different kinds of its own objectives to fulfill, to be smart. But that's there's no one single one.
Yeah, I think I really wish Hong Kong can find out its own definition of smart city before it really put forth investment and effort, diving into it and give us a blueprint. I think I first came across this term during the dot-com period. The early internet era in China, fund manager to be the technical advisor, and they were working with military and trying to build real estate projects of communities, smart communities that would incorporate the internet and all those sort of things. Even at those times, of course, there was more of a hype than anything else, but still, that was what they believed, and I think that more or less describe a little bit of what we understand at a generic level of what we believe the smart city should contain, but to what level, or what extent that go to really meet that definition of yours, or to the people of that particular places is so wide. Yes, Andrew.
One of the themes that has come out, I think, over today are, the sort of risks, the angels and devils that we started out with, and the risks that we're faced with from this. And one of the reasons I think that this is a problem actually comes right down to this very question. That, the internet is unbelievably good at generating meaningless slogans that can, cover anything at all in order to sell, take money out of your pocket. And the Internet of Things is better at that than anything else on the internet, which is a really considerable achievement. And so when somebody comes along and says to you, well, I want a smart home or a smart city or a smart car or a smart train or a smart, anything. I think that it becomes incumbent upon us, if we know anything about these things that people want to deploy, to ask, and what do you mean by this? Tell me what features I'm getting out of this thing for the data that I'm going to give up. And if we do that, we'll get the advantage of responding to the presentation that we saw a little bit earlier about the risks that are coming along with all of this, right? We're leaking all of this data. Well, you better know then what it means when somebody says this is going to be smart. How much am I giving up and how much am I getting out of it? Because it's really an exchange that you're going into. So I think this is an excellent question for which there is not an answer from this panel, but there better be an answer from the people who want to spend $1 billion of your dollars in order to build it.
Okay, well, this actually, there's a second part of the question that we haven't addressed, which is does it infringe the privacy law? Rebecca, you want to ask more of your area expertise? Does the implementation of smart city?
The data privacy law, if you are connected everything, that means you are something the owner might not like to disclose.
You mean a hyper-connected society with it skin?
Again, you know, sort of what is a smart city and for whom is it being smart, right? And who built it and who actually has a say in how it gets built, right? I have a friend named Adam Greenfield who's writing a book that for a while was titled Against the Smart City because he was just so frustrated with kind of rhetoric that he felt was leading in dangerous directions. But I guess that you know, again, you know, when you're building technologies that are interconnected, the question is for whom and who's participating in the decisions about how this is getting put together and how you're building accountability into the system, you know, whether that's, you know, through legal means or through technical means or through transparency practices or whatever it is. But how do you ensure that whatever system you're putting together is actually being used for the purposes that are advertised rather than other purposes, or you know, that power can be abused through the system without anybody even knowing, or knowing too late and not being able to prevent it. So, you know, it's I think imperative that we kind of get beyond the slogans, and you know, in the States we have this problem too, you know, just people talking about, you know, we're going to build a smart city and it's going to serve everybody and blah, blah, blah. But who's making the decisions? You know, how's it being put together? How transparent is this decision-making process about what's being put together? You know, the details really matter. And unfortunately, not enough attention is being paid to those details in terms of just thinking through what the different impacts and risks are going to be and what the intentions are and who owns the thing, who has agency, who is accountable. All these things really matter.
Yeah, I think just to add on that, it's to answer the question, it really depends on, I mean, the regulation, the law, you know, is different. It varies from country to country how the scope, the legal scope of their the definition of what privacy means to that particular jurisdiction. You know, and you know, and you have Hong Kong, or particularly, I guess, the EU-based privacy protection on more of human rights, you know, basis of fundamentals, and then you have the U.S. model where it falls more into the consumer rights, and how do we determine that? And largely, I think it goes back to cultural, you know, belief, and so you know, what do you believe is more is infringing your privacy? You know, what data of you that is, you know, given or, you know, released to a third party that you would feel, infringed, right? So and that varies, all across quite across here. I mean, I'm sure we have some errors, but still, if you want to ask a definition, again, we're going to have different, versions of it. So okay, I guess that I would like to end the panel discussion and thank you all for coming. Of course, thank our distinguished panelists, speakers, for giving us so much fruit for thoughts and some some ideas. Thank you so much. Now, the last and most important item on the agenda or the program, and that's why it's going to be, you're going to be rewarded for your patience and energy to stay until the very last moment of today's symposium. Lucky draw. So all right,
yeah. So may I invite Mr. Song to stay on stage and help us draw the lucky names. So let's see the first winner. Yeah, just start. Bill is Bill here?
Yeah, so we have another chance. Ruby? Oh, Ruby. She left too.
Is Ruby here?
Okay, hope you're still around. George's Chen.
Thank you and congratulations. Now let's see our second winner.
Good, thanks. Well, we have how many witnesses here? So okay, we go back to analog. Right? Okay. Everything on.
Thank you and congratulations. So I hope you have all enjoyed the sessions and gained some valuable experience. I hope everyone had a good time interacting with our speakers and had some valuable experience. And this is the end of the Asia Internet Symposium Hong Kong. And thanks to all of our speakers for giving us such remarkable and insightful presentations. And more importantly, thank you all for your participation. And I hope this has been a fruitful and remarkable day for you all, and that you're able to enjoy yourself throughout the day. So, and again, for everyone, for every participant, please return the badges to the registration counter after conference. And also, once again, for anyone who would like to take the shuttle bus, please go to the place where it dropped off this morning at 6 p.m. or 6:15 p.m. And see you in our next event. Thank you.
Which is 交出嚟啦。